Good afternoon, everyone. It is noon on February 14th. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting to order. And the first order of business is that I would like us to bow our heads and recognize a day of remembrance for Stoneman Douglas. It is a day of service and love. So if we'll do that at this time. Thank you, everyone. It is a day of love, but it's also kind of a sad day in our history here in Florida. So I wanted to take that time to remember those children that lost their lives. All right, so today is our superintendent's workshop, and the superintendent has a few items, and he also, due to our new protocols, allowed us to put some items on there as board members so that we didn't have to have the meeting this afternoon. So we have one meeting today instead of a few, so we appreciate that, Dr. Moore. So Dr. Moore, at this time, I'd like to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for taking the time to recognize what is a hard day in public education here in the state of Florida. Although it is Valentine's Day, we always want to remember what happened at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas and never forget and act accordingly as we move forward. We have two items on our agenda, both coming from the Shop of Curriculum and Instruction. One is a simple update regarding the early learning programs. There is no action coming towards the board as it relates to early learning programs, but we do want to share some of the outstanding work that's being done under Mr. Meyer and Brooke Flood's leadership. And then review of our ELL language item that comes for the board for approval at our February 28th meeting. This is an item that comes every 3 years. And as you recall, at our last workshop, we took the time to provide a comprehensive update, and this is just the actual boilerplate form that goes to the board for approval to be sent to the state. So with that, I'll turn Mr. Meyer over to you to have a deeper explanation and presentations for these two items. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Through the chair, we really do appreciate the past few meetings where we've been able to highlight a lot of the work that staff does across the district. Ms. Malice has done a great job the past couple times. We're talking about homeless education and our supports for our English language learners, and this is a wonderful opportunity for Ms. Flood to highlight the great work that she's doing across the district as well for our youngest learners. So happy to turn that over to her and let her do the presentation, and then we'll answer any questions you may have at the end.
Can you, oh, I don't think I'm on. Oh, maybe I'm on. What? Okay. Well, thank you so much. As y'all know, my time is short, but I could spend all day sharing all the amazing things that we are doing here in our early learning programs department. Basically, our strategic plan goal is what drives us. And as you know, we are a small but mighty little program, and we rely heavily on our community to help us meet that very huge goal to ensure that the school district ranks in the top 10 Florida districts as measured by kindergarten readiness, where, as Mr. Meyer and I have shared, is an indirect and direct correlation for all of us. Let's get this. Oh. So the first part, as many of you are aware, there are two sides to my house. We have our preschool early intervention or our exceptional student education side, and we also have our VPK side. But we'll start today with our pre-K ESC. So as you know, families, if they begin to notice any concerns, maybe a pediatrician, maybe if they're in the private sector, grandma, anybody who says, you know, think maybe your little one's not quite there yet, they're able to give our office a call. They make that referral to Child Find. We run the child through a screener. If they pass the screener, fantastic. We ask the family to continue to monitor. If they continue to see anything, they're always welcome to come to us again. If we do find some deficiencies or areas of need, we bring the child back to the office for a full evaluation with our speech and language pathologist as well as our school psychologist. They run through different, depending on the areas of need, different assessments that they go through. If the child meets eligibility, then we bring the family back. We share the data and let the family know that their child is eligible for certain services, maybe speech, language, autism, spectrum disorder, developmental delay, things of that sort. then we give them time to digest that. That is a big pill to swallow, I would say, for many of our families, especially in the world in which we live right now. And then we bring them back and we allow them the opportunity to meet with our teachers and our therapists who would be providing the services on that individualized education plan, which is written once the family then determines they would like to move forward. And then we get our classroom placement, which I'm going to tell you, we are bursting right now. Our numbers have increased drastically. It occurred to me not too long ago that this time next year will be our first round of our COVID little ones who were born or were in the womb at this time when we went into just prior to the shutdown. So it's going to be an interesting world very soon. Yeah, it slapped me upside the face. I'm just going to be honest. Because with our C2B, we are required by statute to transition those children from early steps. That's our birth to just prior to age 3. And they have to be evaluated technically prior to their 3rd birthday. So when I started writing the 2019 birthday, it occurred to me that next year would be 2020. So this year, our team has screened 99 students since June of last year up until present day. We work collaboratively with Fiddlers, and they send someone a bilingual screener. So, which is great because she can tease out whether it's a dual language or if it's truly something going on. She's fantastic. So she has done 99. Up until this point, we have done 78 team evaluations, 49 speech and language evaluations, 3 developmental delay only. So sometimes they've got their language and their speech. We've had 6 transfers with 2 pending, so they've come from different areas within the state or even out of state. We've had a few from New York recently. And we've had 37 of our C to B evaluations with 14 more between now and very recent. We have 6 that have been scheduled and 8 that are pending. And we are working collaboratively with TATS through UCF, which helps us with our transitions to have us get our early step numbers a little bit quicker so that we can schedule them out. So we're not just one right after one another with us. So that is our pre-K ESE. Then we have our VPK, which our VPK students are 4 as of September 1st. It is our free programming that is offered through the Coalition and the Division of Early Learning. We currently have 11 VPK classrooms within our school district, 8 of which are bachelor degree or higher certified teachers, and 3 are our child development associates. Our pre-K primary certified teachers provide those inclusionary opportunities for our little ones who are in our pre-K ESE classrooms but are not using that certificate of eligibility to say they're in the VPK program. So many of our students in that separate class setting will then head over, if they're making enough progress, to go into that gen ed to be with their neurotypical peers. Districts are required to offer summer VPK programs, but not school year, so it is a blessing that we do offer that here. School year is technically 540 hours. We do provide a 6-hour full day. Our students arrive at 8:45 and leave between 2:45 and 3 o'clock, depending upon their campus. And the VPK Early Learning Coalition, DEL, they fund 3 hours to our day, and the district provides the additional 3 so that we have them for as long as possible. The minimum requirements for the VPK teacher is that 45 hours, that child development associate or equivalent. And our summer VPK is our 300-hour program, which we offer over 30 summer days, and we do them 10-hour days. Some of our families, they're there most of the time, but yeah, they hit that 300 hours. That instruction by statute must be led by a bachelor degreed or higher teacher. It's a more intensive program, so they want those higher degreed staff to be funding that, and our coalition does fund that full program. So then, what do our classrooms look like? Well, as of February 2nd, we had 309 students enrolled. We had 169 VPK students, so those including the ones who have speech and language, it's if they have a certificate. 91 of those are, 91 of that 169 includes our VPK inclusion and our VPK students who might be receiving speech and/or language. We have 62 itinerant students, so those are our students in both community, at their preschool. We provide services at some of our local preschools, our Head Starts. We're now working to get back onto our RCMA campuses to provide direct services, as well as some of our specialized outside clinics, because we have our resource teacher who provides services to them at Coastal, for instance, as well as our district pre-K campuses. So if you're not in a program, parent, guardian can bring you to one of our sites to receive your services. We have 63 ESC students who are in our separate class setting, and 154 ESC students cumulative, VPK, speech and language, VPK inclusion, itinerant, exceptional, and speciality, and on and on and on. We serve a lot of students, and we're not done yet. So it's only February. Our screens are scheduled through mid-March, so it's just an ongoing cycle. They come in, they leave us, they come in, they leave us. And many of our schools have almost doubled. Dodgertown, as of the first day with all students combined, we have increased from 33 to 61 students. Fellsmere has increased from 29 to 35, Glendale 13 to 17, IRA 13 to 18, Pelican Island 29 to 52, VBE 43 to 64, and our itinerants have doubled from 31 students we serve to 61. And we serve them in 11 VPK and VPK inclusion classrooms, and 7, which we are excited, our new VBE ESC classroom will be opening on Tuesday next week. Our teacher is here. Our teacher assistant is starting tomorrow. So she's had a chance to be in the classrooms, get to know the students, as well as sit in on parent conferences, because it's conference week for us. So she'll get to share and welcome and introduce herself to our families as we begin to move them over into her classroom. So we're real excited for that. And we are busting, so Mr. Fagan will be hearing from me soon. Flickers, yay, that's our grade. As our statute, we are required to adopt a statewide kindergarten screening instrument that assesses kindergarten readiness for students going into K. And it must be administered to all students within the first 30 days of the school year. It's also used to back check our readiness rates for our VPK program. Students must demonstrate a score of at least 500 on the STAR Early Literacy Assessment to be considered ready for kindergarten, as determined by the state board, and that readiness rate then would come back to us as VPK providers to show how well we're preparing our students for kindergarten based on our early learning and developmental standards. And as you can see in 2020, Indian River did outrank the state, which was fantastic. We did just receive, and we will share out, if you have not seen our latest readiness rates, they were posted just recently, so we'll make sure you have a copy of that. And this is where it gets kind of fun, kind of tough. We're a provider, we have 1,200 students that come into kindergarten. I see 180. Little bit more if you add my summer, so I'm only touching a small portion. So here's where that indirect yet direct affect on kindergarten readiness and that big strategic plan goal really moved us towards our next big initiative to move forward, to begin to show that growth and continue to move us up. So our new initiatives, three really exciting new initiatives that have just come into place. I already shared about our student allocation model. We did open with both the Coalition and Dell and Title I. Thank you, Karen. We were able to fund a new VPK classroom at Dodgertown, and she is 5 short of being full, which is really great. And it opened a little bit later So this year, moving in, we'll be able to recruit a little bit more and have those classrooms full by the time school starts. However, we are very lucky that it was available this year because student families from other schools that did not have room, those families chose to go to Dodgertown. And we have just, in the last 2 weeks, have had 3 students enroll at Dodgertown, and 1 will be coming to Pelican Island. So we're just in this constant move and groove. So our new pre-K ESC classroom is fantastic. I have been in this district, this is my 26th year, my 7th year in this position, and I must say, having this allocation model made it so easy. I went, I said, here's my numbers, this is what we're looking at, they're still coming, please help, and it was, yep, we're able to do that. You just get somebody in there, and I was lucky because when I have my calls with the rest of the other me's around the state, they're having a hard time finding a teacher to be able to fill that type of classroom. So we are blessed beyond that we were not only able to get the classroom, but to staff it, and staff it appropriately. So we're very glad for that. Huge thank you to Learning Alliance, CSAC. We pushed through a grant last year for a social emotional learning coach. So this coach is teacher and staff focused, not so much on the behavior of the child, but how our staff responds and not reacts to behavior. And I asked her to send me some of the things she's been doing. She's providing monthly activities, manipulatives, moonshot collaboration. She's providing books and support in the classrooms. She's also managing our parent engagement, which being on 6 campuses can be difficult because you want to make sure everybody's hearing the same message, but trying to have parent nights and things like that. So it's been exciting to see this come into play. She was just hired in October, and in what she has done since October, it has been a godsend because our teachers are feeling it. They're feeling the love. They're feeling more supported. They have questions if they need visual schedules, if they need picture cards. She's able to get those done immediately, printed, laminated, ready to go. We're also using the EDECA to measure social emotional growth. So that's given 3 times a year. This year, because she started late, we just completed it because we finally had a full house in February since the Omicron really kind of got us in January. So our teachers looked back and did a 30 days, how are you in relation to different social emotional skills, both positive and negative. You know, are you getting angry easily, or can you transition to a different activities easily? So she has been a great asset. She was one of our former pre-K ESC teachers, so many of our staff already were comfortable, had trust in her, and that made it very easy to transition. For all my data people, and for me especially, because now I don't have to hand do data, Catherine Beck and Dr. McMahon have been working furiously to get our Power BI dashboard. So this dashboard will contain our Indian River Kindergarten Readiness Assessment data that are 2-block and higher providers, which I'll share with you in a second, as well as school district, put in our data. We are then able to aggregate and disaggregate data based on, is it school district? Is it private? Is it both school district and private? Are we looking at just boys? Are we looking at August boys versus January boys? Are we looking at our students with disabilities? So we will have that opportunity to really dig into the data to see how our students are doing in relation to the community. And that's that part. So this is very, very proud. And I have to say, been getting nice nudges from senior leadership and superintendent to really go forward with this crazy vision. I would like to introduce to you our Early Learning Programs Department and the ELC IRMO Community Collaboration Project. Our theme in early learning is blocks. We are building learners on course to kindergarten success. And how are we doing that? Well, we have created a block designation program. And basically what that is it shows an alignment from a private preschool to the school district and how much they're willing to align themselves to show that they're working very hard to make sure their little ones are ready for kindergarten. So our first block is our utilization of the pre-K to K transition form. We are very proud of that. We have used that for about 5 years now. Greg in the IT department, he and his staff have created a way that as soon as that transition form is uploaded into Focus, it connects to that student and stays with that student. As soon as the student is scheduled into a school and to a teacher, that teacher has immediate access to that transition form, which was that last day in VPK or whenever that teacher chose to complete that form. Parent give permission to have that information shared with the district, and it gives that snapshot of April or May or whenever that student finished the VPK program. So it provides us that provider to district communication with us really pushing forward with Focus for kindergarten enrollment. It's actually encouraging our providers to be able to push their families to create that Focus ID, because we have included a space for those incoming Ks. If they're not part of us where we have speech and or language, an itinerant student, they would be able to get that ID. Let's see. Okay, so many of our providers, we actually have, thanks to Miss Valerie back in the back, she is our quality specialist here with the coalition. We just came on with just as we were walking in here, 2 more providers came on as a 1 block. We have not gotten to everybody yet. We just really rolled this out about the beginning to middle of December, right before break. So we're just getting the word out to the community. And we have many providers who have already been a transition form provider. So we wanted to recognize them as well. If you're willing to share, we want to make sure you are recognized. So we have 4 preschools that are on board with that. The second opportunity for those providers is to participate in the Indian River Kindergarten Readiness Benchmark Assessment. While STAR and the VPK assessment are great, they don't really give the teacher that nitty-gritty, how many letters does a child know? Are they able to pattern? Are they able to comprehend? Are they able to join and separate? Can they work through their, are they able to work through deleting and creating, putting syllables together? My brain just shut down. I apologize, y'all. So this really helps to support progress monitoring and visibility. So with the IRK Ready, if a provider chooses to do that, they would participate in 2 to 3 data chats, goal tracking and tracking of their student learning with myself and the coalition. So their quality specialist comes out with us. Their program director, if she's able to be on Teams, will be there. We always invite Marcia, the ED, to be on if she's able. Myself, my resource coach, quasi-instructional coach, and our social emotional learning coach will all be there at the table talking through their data, being able to look, are we all seeing the same deficits? Are we all seeing an increase in the same areas? What can we do to help each other, to help all of our little ones be on course for kindergarten success? So if you're a 2 block, you're doing IRK Ready, and you're doing the transition form. Then we take it a step higher by utilizing what we call our high impact standards, which is done through a monitoring spreadsheet, which has our targeted instruction of our early learning and developmental standards. It's broken down into the 8 domains, and it affords that VPK teacher the opportunity to look at all those standards that we say, please make sure out of the hundreds that we have that you teach before kindergarten, and it's broken down into assessment periods. So you can put your students' names right on those lists, and you can go through and monitor, oh, I might need to go back. I see a lot of developing in this standard. I might need to go back and reteach it, reassess it, and before the next assessment period. If you come on as a 3 block, it then also gives you that data chat. You can share that spreadsheet with us, and we'll be able to look work through it. One of the pieces I forgot to mention with the IRK Ready is as that 2-block, you are able to get exclusive access to our focus system where you're inputting your student data, which is how it then gets input into Power BI so that we can all see all of that community data. And then what I love, and if you've already looked through the presentation, this was the big kicker and why a lot of our preschools jumped in as a full 4-block, was the utilization of our SDRC pre-K report card and parent conference summary form. Our staff have, for at least 5 years, been utilizing our pre-K report card. It is based on our early learning and developmental standards. It is done through the focus system, so it's monitored those 3 times a year. And this report card, when it was given to our providers, it also carries our logo, our SDRC Early Learning logo. And so many of our providers have said that gives legitimacy to what we're doing. We are not just your child's babysitter. We are somebody who is teaching your child. We have standards that are to be met. And it really, that was the one piece. And what I love is that parent communication and collaboration. We are then able to say the same language. We're sharing the same conference forum, saying the same thing. Your child needs to work on this. Your child could work on that. She's really great in this, or he's working really hard in this area. It also gives the data chats, the tracking of the learning and the goal setting. And I really have to give thanks to the coalition and Pat Houston, Marsha Power, and Valerie. Without them and without them encouraging me to encourage the trust in the providers, we would have never gotten to this space. And the providers have said that. I mean, we have used to be, and as naive as I was when I came into this position, I was like, oh my gosh, we're going to work together, all of the preschools in the school district. And yeah, that wasn't it. It was, oh, you're stealing our children, or oh, you're opening another classroom and it's going to take away from me. And now it's completely opposite. Now it is, oh, we are in alignment with the district. And when our providers come on board, whether they're a 4-block or a 1-block, we present them with a plaque that they get to hang in their offices by their front doors that says, we have aligned with the district. And so many are just so proud of that. And let me share. So here are just a few little snippets from 2 of our first 4-block providers. Sally at Little Rising Stars, she has done a lot of MCAN work with us, has really been pivotal in getting that alignment together and how we could make it happen. And her recognizing and waiting to be a part of that collaboration with the strategic plan made it all worthwhile for her. And she really feels like she's not just that little tiny pebble anymore. Now I'm the stone in the road that makes the road to kindergarten much brighter. And Christina over at Asbury, tiny, tiny preschool. They have 1 classroom of VPK, but they have been on board since the very, very beginning. And I think what was so powerful from what she said was that I didn't want to add one more thing, but that one more thing gives me the language to speak to a parent. It gives a parent what they need to hear and to show that I'm not just a babysitter. You're not just dropping off your child, but you are giving me the opportunity to educate your little one to get them ready for kindergarten. And she said she no longer felt like she was in a tiny pond, that now she's excited to collaborate with us. Another cool thing that the coalition is willing to do is each year they publish a list of VPK providers. I think there's about 24 of us total. And next to that, this coming year, will be our designations. So if you're a 4-block, if you're a 2-block, a 3-block, a 1-block, it'll be designated next to you so that when a parent calls me and says, I'd really like my child to come into your Pelican Island VPK. Well, I don't have any room. However, take a look at our provider list. These blocked providers are in alignment. 4 blocks are fully aligned with the district. And some of them are even using the same curriculum we have. So we are talking alignment. So it just gives us the opportunity to then share our little ones that we may not have the room with our providers. And it has been very well received. My next big one that we are in conversations with is our Moonshot Academy for Emergent Readers. So many of you are probably aware of our Moonshot Academies that are in the elementary grades, typically about first and second grade. So we have had a need for before and or after care or extended learning for our little ones for many years. That's why we in the district do lose a lot of our families, because we are done at 3 o'clock. We don't have that wraparound like a private provider might. So after all the years, and it's difficult to be a part of our extended learning program in the schools because of the ages of our little ones. So I kind of racked my brain, and reached out to the Learning Alliance and said, I have this idea. Can you help me? This is really going to help us improve kindergarten readiness. And so we are working to fund this program that will start in the fall with the Learning Alliance. Marcia, the executive director of the coalition, we've had conversations to see, is there any money that they are able to help us with? We'll push out multiple grants. It'll basically be an extended learning and literacy opportunity for our VPK students on all 6 campuses. And it will run from 3 to 5:30, with our 3 to 4:30 being that emergent literacy, that immersion in literacy, where they're problem solving, they're writing their own stories, they're creating, they're playing, they're engaging, working with Bridget and Debbie Arsenault from the Learning Alliance to work on how will that align to our curriculum, what will it look like, what will that day be, and then our 4:30 to 5:30 would be structured play, allowing the opportunity to just enjoy one another and have that time. The biggest component to this is that continuous professional development and coaching for our teachers and staff. Our goal is to have our staff provide this opportunity for our students, and we would follow the model that Moonshot Academy has in the elementary school space, where the teachers are receiving PD and then PD to practice. They go right into the classrooms and they practice with the students in the Moonshot Academy, and then they bring it back to students who maybe aren't a part of it during their school day. We're also looking to, as we move forward, eventually, big, wildly important goal, I would love to see our private providers. Many of our private providers, teachers are only working that VPK day. Some may only work the wraparound, but they may have the opportunity to come and work in one of our schools. That would then give those smaller providers that opportunity for that PD that those teachers would in turn bring back to their staff. And then globally would be so cool to eventually put a Moonshot Academy at some of our preschools in the next few years. Obviously not this year. We want to get it right with ours. What this has also opened the door to is collaboration with Treasure Coast Technical College. Christy and LaTanya and myself, we've been trying to figure out how we can get our youngest learners and some of our oldest learners together in a space. And they are working to provide an early childhood dual enrollment program. Yes, so their dual enrollment students, once they hit a certain number of hours, will then come into our classrooms to do their observation hours, and they have to have lots. It's like 400 hours. So we're hoping with this collaboration to be able to offer an externship. So if those dual students are able to join us in our Moonshot Academy, not only are they getting more professional development, getting paid, but then they're also getting their observation hours at the other end of the day. So very, very excited for this. Our next meeting is this Thursday to talk about staffing, the cost, and moving forward with our Moonshot Academies, because the more kids we can get ready for kindergarten, the better our readiness rates will be. So legislatively, and yes, some of this could change, but here's where we are right now. House Bill 419, early learning and early grade success. With House Bill 419, they have pushed out many different components to that. The first being an increase in emergent literacy and Florida early learning and developmental standards. So we have 15 hours of approved emergent literacy coursework for all lead VPK teachers, as well as 5 additional hours of early learning and developmental standards training, and that must all be done by July 2022, so you are ready to roll by by August. In the district, most of our teachers participated in the REL, oral language and vocabulary training last school year, which was 20 hours, which then was part of that emergent literacy, so they are ahead of the game. We just trained both VPK and pre-K ESC teachers. Our 5 hours of early learning and developmental standards was at our January 31st PD day. New to us, though not new to school readiness providers, is the class assessment. So it's the classroom assessment scoring system, and it provides that metric of quality for teacher and student interactions. It will begin in July, so that'll be our fall classes, our fall classroom VPKs. So that is basically someone coming in, monitoring both the teacher and the teacher assistant and how they interact with our students. That will be part of our readiness rate moving forward. Also, we have our coordinated screening and progress monitoring tool from pre-K to 8th grade. So starting next year, instead of our VPK assessment, we will have this coordinated screen, whichever it is the state determines to be that assessment. It'll be computer-based and adaptive. We will take it 3 times a year, and it will then determine how our rates are and how we're performing in comparison to the rest of the state. Dell we will have a performance metric, which will be pushed out next year, where we will develop our methodology for calculating VPK performance to include both that program assessment, that class, and our child learning gains on that coordinated screen and progress monitoring. So this year, as we move out, there will not be VPK provider rates for 2021, 2022. We are still required to do all of our assessments, but we won't be assessed until that new system comes out next year. And then that new metric will be assigned in 2023, 2024 based on the 2022, 2023 scores, which is an interesting metric. So it's excellent, highly proficient, proficient, emerging, and emerging proficiency and unsatisfactory, which is different than being ready or not. So it's nice to have just that little bit. And then, very proud, we have our Transition to K Best Practices Plan. That was part of House Bill 7011. I had the chance to share with Dr. Moore just recently that the school district and our coalition have been designated as an exemplar partnership with all that we do by the Division of Early Learning. Pat Houston and myself, we got to present all about 4 blocks in about a 45-minute time span at 2 separate Transition to K virtual conferences, the Advanced Transition to K and the Advanced Intermediate or Intermediate Emerging, not Emerging, Intermediate, on the 8th. And I was able to facilitate our Transition to K Best Practices Plan on February 2nd, which was about an hour and a half. And myself, Pat, Valerie, Marie from Learning Alliance, Judy from MCAN, Judy Miller from MCAN, and 2 of our providers, Rashna from Learning Nest and Christina from Asbury. We were all able to start working on our plan, which was really great because before House Bill 7011 said you have to do these things, we had already been kind of talking about them. So now we're putting on paper 4 blocks hits a good majority of what these requests are. And so it was kind of nice having that little foresight to know where to go with that. So as we shared before, there's a lot of documents I'd love to share with you what we're sharing with the state Transition to K. They've asked us for all of our 4 block, as well as there's transcripts and the videos from our presentations that we'd like to share with you, as well as our Flickr score. So that wraps it up for me.
Yep. Thank you, Ms. Flood. Very comprehensive presentation. I'm sure we'll field some questions, but just to add into the results that we got, as Ms. Flood said, we got those after the presentation was posted, so we'll get those out to all the board members. If you haven't seen them, they're on the DOE's website. But what's interesting for us personally is that the numbers do show that we hit our strategic plan metric of increasing our statewide rankings at the target that we had set. So, so we're excited about that. So a good year. Dr. Moore?
No, that is the presentation. I want to thank Brooke and Mr. Meyer for leading from the front. And the board, as well as this community, takes early learning the highest level of importance. And for us, this is, as Brooke mentioned, we have it in our strategic plan because of the influence that it has on ultimate outcomes. Students come in ready, ultimately we'll be able to accelerate them and improve the overall quality of instruction.
Dr. Moore, your mic.
I hear myself in. The overall quality of instruction for all students. So putting the blocks program into place is an opportunity for us really to serve as a organization that's evaluating the criteria of work, ensuring not only are we partnering, but being very public with our practice and making sure an endorsement from the School District of Indian River County is an endorsement of quality programming that ensures your children will be ready for kindergarten. So that expectation that we have, we know that is a big fix to any community's public school system. I think we're probably the only ones that are doing that and doing it in a lens, through a lens of partnership, and really building and partnering with VBK programs, because as Brooke said, her level of influence over an indicator that is attached to her is very, very, very small. But to have a high level of influence over that indicator, we can do that through partnership, and we can do that through development, and we can do it through collaboration, and we can do it by being extremely public and saying, community, this is where you want your children, because you want them to be ready. And if you're not endorsed by the School District of Indian River County, you might want to ask yourself, is that the best place to send your children? And that's at the root some of the work that we are doing. So very, very, very proud. We'd be happy to answer any questions that the board may have, as we know the level of importance the board places on this program.
Okay, first of all, thank you for your presentation. Before my colleagues get to ask you questions, you know this is a passion of mine, having been a principal of an early learning center. Two things that I want to ask you to do before, though, we start with questions is to please explain ELCIRMO. We use acronyms a lot, and I think since this is being broadcast, we need to explain our acronyms in education, if you don't mind.
ELCIRMO is the Early Learning Coalition of Indian River, Martin, and Okeechobee. So our coalition embodies the 3 districts.
Thank you. The other thing is you mentioned that we have a new teacher and assistant here from VBE. Would you like to introduce them? They're not in here. Okay. You mentioned that they were coming, so.
They were on campus.
Gotcha.
But here
They're
in the
working
audience.
in their schools.
And I know, they are working. If I could please, I would like to
Sure.
introduce Marcia Power. She
Please.
is our Executive Director of the Early Learning Coalition of Indian River, Martin, and Okeechobee. Pat Houston, she is our Program Director. And Valerie Powell, she is our Quality Specialist. These are my 3 close pals as we roll out everything VPK and 4-block.
Right, and we appreciate you being here. Thank you, Marcia. It's important that we understand what our coalition does and that they support us and they're here for us. And partnering on this 4-block program, I think, is exciting. So especially with some of the legislation that's coming, it's moving through right now, is important that we're all on board with this. So we appreciate that. Okay, who would like to go first? Mr. Barefoot, you're on.
Excellent presentation. I just have a couple of questions. In a perfect world, recognizing the demand far exceeds your ability to provide, the constraints are, and correct me if I'm wrong, first of all, funding. Second of all, if you don't have the funding, you can't hire the professionals. But if you had funding, could you attract the professionals?
I'm going to say yes, through the chair, I apologize. I'm going to say yes, and I do believe that as we move forward, especially with TCTC, pushing out their dual enrollment, having those students out there, many young people are coming through with that early learning, though it is difficult. This is a field that is getting increasingly hard for, if you don't have a passion for early learning, to be able to understand how a child between 3 and 5 years old acts compared to how television may portray them to look. But I do believe that we have been blessed as I've needed teachers. Those teachers have been there. I actually have one of my teacher assistants who is finishing up her internship this semester and is hoping to have a position in our program very soon, if something opens.
So if the source of funding besides the district budget, you go to other organizations and apply for grants, correct? Or not? Let me ask you another way. Does what your program here, would it be feasible to apply for grants? There's not plenty, but several organizations around the county that provide funding for lots of programmatic-oriented activities. Would your program, have you tried, or would your program qualify?
Through the chair, the answer is the district would be able to apply for anything that we qualify for. We have yet to do that for, I guess, I don't know if you're referring to regular school year provision of service, full-day services, but it's not something that we could not do.
Well, it could be during the school, it could be summer, it could be, any number of things, because there's been enough conversation, at least in the world that I live in here, that a number of things come up. This is one of them. And, if you follow the Learning Alliance, there's plenty of demand for K through 5, but if you had better pre-K, then the demand at K through 5 to 3, and we could go on and add math, and we could go on and on and on. I'm just thinking that, and this is probably a discussion to have offline, that if I were starting a business, and that business is a not-for-profit to provide pre-K education, what would I need in a business plan? To go out and get funding privately. And I have the feeling that there's probably more philanthropic dollars available in order to fund something like this if you put together, and I use the word business plan, I apologize for using the world that I came from. I think you'd find, I'd be surprised if there's not dollars available. So maybe at some point offline, we could sit down and see if some sort of a general outline of a business plan, which is consistent with what you're already doing, you're just expanding on it, could not be marketed to the philanthropic community here and get the same kind of, maybe not to the same extent, but some funding similar to what the Learning Alliance is able to get through K through 3.
Through the chair, yes, very much open to that, and that's why I went to the Learning Alliance in regards to our Moonshot Academy, knowing that they could assist, if not helping me push through to receive grants, to be able to serve my students longer, to be sure they are prepared, and to provide that assistance for our families as well.
This is really a question for you, Dr. Moore. Grant writers are important, and this is my ignorance, but does the district, do you rely on staff to write grants, or is there someone who's really skilled at writing grants?
We've talked about this.
And they're not necessarily, I'm not suggesting one isn't the other, but
Through the chair, I think as we prepare for our reorganization next year, there won't be significant amounts of transitioning. One of the things we did, I think it was when I did my initial reorganization, is to put that under Ms. Emerson's shop And what we have found is before you start writing grants, you need to ensure that they're aligned in supporting the district's strategic plan and coordinating the alignment. So now I think we are at a place in the realm of innovation to be very strategic in ensuring we're accessing the right resources or identifying the right resources to go after. And yes, this district does need someone who coordinates, does the boilerplate, blanket plate grant writing, the research is there. Right now, we're relying on the content experts, and as we have been deploying as a result of COVID and everything else in terms of our priorities, now is the time to really consider, how we take the next step in that particular area.
Okay, well, let's sometime over the next few weeks, let's have a discussion and see if, there are, and we employed this going back, when I was mayor of Indian River Shores, there are individuals that are professional grant writers that you could bring in and project by project, hire them to, and know how to write a grant for specific requests. So there's always the ability to call it outsourcing if there isn't internal, someone who's particularly knowledgeable of, let's say, education-oriented terminology as opposed to trying to get grants to repair roads or, that sort of thing. So we can talk about this offline, but nice job.
All right, thank you. Board members, anybody else?
Sure. Few things. Before I have my own comments, so I'm going to give a shout out to Ms. Powers, who sits on the school board in Martin County as well as her early learning development. We've had a couple of chats. But coming to somebody else's board meeting as well as your own, props to you. Yeah, Ms. Flood, you mentioned that at the moment you were bursting at the seams. You had 309 enrolled. Can you tell me what capacity is?
Our VPK classrooms, we limit to 20. Certain classrooms are funded differently, so they can hold different capacities of students. We have some classrooms that are Title I funded, so they are just our VPK students. They might have speech and or language services, but they're not going to be providing IEP services. They're going to go to one of my other classrooms. I have other VPK classrooms that are inclusive settings, so those VPK teachers have 12 VPK students and 8 pre-K ESC inclusion students. Dodgertown has theirs split among 4. It's like,
Yeah, so what I was really asking, and I understand, and thank you, because yes, there are distinctions, and capacity is clearly not a straight answer. But to give an overall capacity, you said you're at 309. Is there a number that's overall capacity? And back to Mr. Barefoot's comment about funding and resources.
so I apologize, through the chair. I have 184 VPK seats. Pre-K ESC is ongoing. We are required by statute to provide services to any student who is determined eligible to have an individualized education plan. So if you come, I provide a seat. And that's where I'm thankful for our SAM, because we're kind of looking at 10 students in a classroom with a certain number of staff. And as I've hit those markers, have been able to go, Mr. Meyer is aware, Dr. Moore is aware, going to then Mr. Fagan and saying, here's my numbers, here's where I am, are you able to help? And he has helped in that way. We also wrote on the last list when we were together, when we got back in January, that we were going to be watching Dodgertown, my pre-K ESC there, and we are right at that capacity. So I'm kind of seeing where the next round of students go. I also try to be strategic in if I can move someone from, if they're kind of more North Vero to Central, can I put them at Dodgertown to kind of alleviate some of the heaviness on VBE? But right now I'm finding that South County is where my ESC students are coming from, and to ask them to go to Dodgertown or even Pelican Island is a haul. So that's where my numbers get, but there's no max. I've had years where I've had 18 ESC students self-contained with a teacher and a TA. When our new administration has come in, obvious their support of early learning, it was like, no, that is not supporting it is not providing that early intervention, we need to work to bring your numbers down. So, thank you. You're welcome.
I guess the only
You
thing
don't
that I
ask a
would
simple
add-
question,
The only
get
thing,
a
yeah, the only thing that I would
complicated
add to that is the 184 seats. That's something that the district prioritizes based off our Title I that allows those students to come for the full day because the VPK program only pays for half of the day. There are a number of districts across the state that do not do that. They do not use their Title I to provide wraparound services, and they do not even provide any half-day services. So it's not uncommon to travel the state of Florida and see some districts with no school year VPK. They only provide it as required in statute in the summertime. So this district is doing a great job of doing that and is preparing the students, but we're, of course, limited in the number of seats that we can provide. That goes back to maybe to Mr. Barefoot, your question of could we get additional funds to add more wraparound services with that VPK voucher? And that would be an opportunity we could look to pursue.
Yeah, I appreciate also Mr. Barefoot raising the issue of grant writing, which Dr. Moore and I have had a lot of conversations about. And I've said for a few years, I feel like we need to fund a specific grant writer in the district. I appreciate your acknowledgement that funding a grant writer without clarity on that, on what exactly we need it for and how that aligns to the strategic plan is an important consideration. But I do believe we're working towards that in this budget. Would I be right in saying that?
100%.
Thank you. The other thing is I am not an early education expert, and I do not pretend to be. I have, however, seen some research talking about the relationship that early education is in general a good thing, but depends very much how it's aligned to necessary skills in kindergarten. So I appreciate you. I think what I hear through the lines is you addressing how we're doing that here, and that it, from my admittedly, extremely limited research, it has predominantly to do with literacy skills and how those translate not just to English learning, but specifically to math. And while, clearly we're not, I hope, teaching math in, well, teaching it in ways that are age appropriate, of course, in early education, but that is apparently the thing that makes the most significant difference in future academic success. And so I think what I hear you saying is that, yes, we are doing that, and here is this block program, and here's all the ways we're doing it and making sure it's happening not just in our programs, but around the county. Am I hearing that right, and is there anything you'd add?
Through the chair, you are hearing that correctly. We have been it's great to be able to say to parents, we do have standards. And they begin at birth. You can pull down our website, the Division of Early Learning. You can look at the developmental milestones for a child from the womb. And as we have shared through MCAN and things of that, it actually begins in the womb. Those conversations, the reading and all. So yes, we have worked tirelessly to align along our 8 domains, from physical development to social emotional to approaches to learning, literacy, our numeracy. Our standards are actually broken down into algebraic thinking, geometry, science and social studies is technology, and engineering. That's where our blocks came from. Our VPK program focuses on building blocks and tinkering and things of that sort. So yes, while we're staying developmentally appropriate, there does come a time where we want to know, are you picking up letters? Our standards say you need to know some letters before you go to kindergarten. There's no designation. However, knowing where our little ones need to go in the future, we have created cut scores as to what we consider limited developing and mastering in those areas. And it does include numeracy. I think there's 9 questions on our IRK Ready that are numeracy and 9 areas of literacy. So we're trying to keep it pretty balanced. And if you don't mind, since you said I could expound a little bit more, one thing that I forgot to say was at our February 28th board meeting, you will all be able to recognize our 4-block and 1-block providers. Dr. Moore will be presenting, and our coalition staff will be here as well. We'll be recognizing all of the block providers that have come on. to let them know how important their alignment with us is. So,
Thank you. And then my last question on this. You alluded to different ways that you'll be addressing outcomes, not like yes, no, but those, I think it was 5 different designations. Are you seeing yet, or is it too early to ask for what outcomes we are seeing?
through the chair, a little too early to ask. We're kind of building the plane as we fly it. Great idea. We have these providers that jumped on immediately. Unfortunately, Omicron kind of hit the private sectors a little bit harder than it hit us. So they were delayed in their assessment. Now they're done. Now they're, okay, can you come by the preschool? Can you show us how we're going to put it into focus? Learning Alliance has been wonderful to help us with a new way. Well, it's not really a new way, but it's, we use the Sunform program to learn sounds and letters. So they're wanting data, but we don't have it all yet because not everybody is done assessing because we've had kids in, kids out, and we want to make sure that they get everything correctly all at once. So yes, I anticipate in the next 2 weeks, we should be able to see that data because we want to start our data chats to give those providers that opportunity to work through the next 4 or 5 weeks. Are we seeing a change? And then they have another 4 weeks or so before it's time to send them on to kindergarten.
Thank you. That's all.
My pleasure.
Dr. Jones?
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Flood and Mr. Meyer. Great presentation. I think we all know how important early learning is for our students. And Ms. Flood, thank you for growing that partnership with our programs. I know 4 or 5 years ago it was not like that, and we're all here for the same reason, for our students, so thank you. One thing, Ms. Flood, when you were looking at getting some services after 3 p.m. for the pre-K students, would they then have to pay the after-school program, or how would that work if we can do that?
That, through the chair, that is something we're working through. There's kind of the pros and cons to either of it. If there is a small nominal fee, it provides that, oh, I am standing true to this, I am all in. But we also know that the students that we are serving, it's not always possible. So that's where conversations with the coalition have come in. How can we assist if we do decide that there's some kind of small payment for that extended learning opportunity? Currently in the schools, it is not, but that is something as we move forward this week.
Okay.
Those will be in discussion.
And when we look at our Flickrs results, we're at 58 and the state is at 54. And I know this is done on a computer. Do we know those students who may have had access to a computer before? I mean, how are their results looking compared to those who have had it since birth? I mean, I'm just looking at that in general. Is that giving us a real indication of where students are who may not have been on a computer a lot before this time?
Through the chair, that question gets asked a lot, and the research, there's no conclusive research that makes any impact. And they've
Okay.
attempted to replicate that for a number of different products that are out there, and there hasn't been anything that's definitive that you can point to, an evidence-based study
Okay.
that makes a difference.
Okay, that's good. I love the fact someone, this quote, "We need to be a high level of influence for best practices." And looking at our building blocks and so forth, that is so important. You're coming out of the box on things, and I like that a lot because these wraparound services, as you work with Ms. Mallett's in Title I, and what can we do? Where do we need to go, I think is important. And I would like to personally thank every VBK teacher. I've been in a couple classrooms this year, Dodgetown and VBE, and the SAM model for working for us to provide for our students because they work every minute of that day. So I appreciate that, every minute. Again, like Dr. Schiff said, that's not my expertise, but I've gone in and observed it, and they're very, very hardworking people. Keep up the good work. The best practices working with Learning Alliance and our Moonshot school and so forth, I think is key to helping our students. We say by 3rd grade, it's a high school graduation indicator, but we all know it starts earlier than that. Thank you, Brooke.
Ms. Rosario?
Hi, thank you so much for the presentation. I have so many, I'm excited because I have so many things that I want to acknowledge, first, I'd like to acknowledge all of the detail, obviously. The 4-block collaboration with local providers is genius. I just wanted to know whose idea was that in the first place? And if we are in this coalition, are we the only county, or are other counties doing the same thing?
Through the chair. So let's just say I'm very thankful to Dr. Moore for encouraging my wild and crazy thoughts that come to me. We had a conversation, I think, a spring ago as to how can we align, what can we do, and I had shared with them, our increased partnership, and many of the providers I have on speed dial. They can call me at any time. If I need something from them, I can call them. And we started talking a little bit about a designation program, but nothing big. And then last year, when Erin Grawl came to town and she had signed the bill, and then we had a little reception over at Quail afterwards. We started talking, and I was there with Dr. Moore. And when we were leaving, I said, I really think this 4 blocks that I had already kind of explained a little bit, not fully yet. I said, I really think this might work. And he said, well, you just, go with it. Keep going. So I was like, all right. Well, then we had some senior leadership meetings, and we had to come up with our wildly important goal. And that became, with his push and Mr. Meyer, that became my goal. And how was I going to make it work? And it took a lot of thinking and a lot of processing, and honestly could not do it without the coalition. I couldn't do it without my resource teacher, Jill. I couldn't do it without IT. I mean, they've built the platform in which we can input the data. And then Dr. McMahon's team has come in, and they're building that platform to be able to do it. And as Marcia was shaking her head behind, this is why the state had asked us to present twice, was because no one is to this level yet. And I am honored. I am proud to serve under folks who really encourage us to try those weird, give it a try. Let's see what happens. And it's actually gone bigger than I expected it to, which is really cool. And I've met my goal. Have we completed it fully? No, because we don't know where we're going to be next year with all the blocks in regards to being in that top 10. But as far as getting our providers on board, yes, we are there.
So how many providers do we have now?
So currently, we have 8 that are considered 4-block, so they are our highest. And we have 4 which are our 1-block, who are providing that transition form, that provider to district information. And we have St. Peter's Academy and the 4 Head Starts in the wings. We were able to, both Head Start and our CMA, our Redland Christian Migrant Association, and our Head Start programs, they have federal requirements that they have to participate in. They have certain assessments, and they have parent meetings. And when we looked really closely at what forms and information they are sharing with families, as well as could possibly share with us, it fully aligned without changing what they're already doing. They don't have to do our assessment, because honestly, they're doing one that's even more so than what we do here in the district. So we were able to proclaim them just last week as 4 blocks. So that brought 3 more campuses on board with us. And we're in conversations with Head Start to do the same. And Head Start is one of our biggest providers. They send in about 200 to 250 students, roundabouts where we are. So.
And how many other providers are still out there? Approximate. I know there's probably a whole lot.
Maybe about 10, 12. I mean, we're almost there.
You're going one by one by one?
Yes.
Interesting.
We've shared it out at multiple provider meetings. That's been kind of our gateway, is Pat always invites me to speak at all of our provider meetings, anything going on with the district. When we had choice, when we had some of the opportunities when we used to have kindergarten roundups and the transition forums. So I always get that forum. So we've been sharing it out. But the overwhelm, as everybody has heard here in even the district, this year has been the hardest COVID year than the last 2 years. And our providers are really feeling it. They're losing staff. One of our directors passed away. I mean, it's just, there's so much. So for us, it's more meaningful if we go out and talk to you one-to-one. Let me show you the brochure that we have that shows you the different blocks and what each. And if you're only able to do a 1 block this year, that is fantastic. That's what you've done in the past. Next year, let's see if we can bring in a 2, 3, or 4, because everything that's in 2, 3, and 4 actually gives you the information for the transition form.
So a few other questions. Something that came up when we heard from the ELL presentation was looking at students in cohort. What would be pretty interesting right now is to kind of follow these kids through a cohort as they come into VPK, so that we can see, will this model actually work? If this model is not working, you know, because there are so many other, because these providers are not part of the district, it's not like we can actually, you know, supervise them or monitor their work to ensure that they're actually doing what they're supposed to be doing, other than looking at the assessment and the results of the data that come from that, which we hope that they're doing it accurately, right? So looking at the cohort will kind of give us some information as to how students are, how do they come in, of course, how are they progressing, and then where are they in kindergarten, possibly where are they up until 3rd grade. I mean, just to kind of get this, I don't know if that's longevity, but kind of get this long-term look at the progress over time versus someone who comes in just kindergarten, or a cohort that comes in, and this way, kind of like our own in-house study and see if it's working or not.
Through the chair, that is our goal. I've actually talked to Mr. McDonald to see if I can put a little 4 block, because those are the ones that are fully aligned. In where you were saying we don't have the oversight, the
Right.
coalition has the oversight. So with the coalition being at the table with us as the school district, in front of the director and the teachers, then we lay out a plan and Valerie is able to execute and make sure they are working through what they're saying that they are going to work through. And we definitely want to watch that cohort as we move through. Next year, as we have more on and we have a full year of data, I think will be great, but we definitely want to in some way document this first round.
That would be pretty interesting to watch over time. The dual enrollment program at Treasure Coast Technical College, I kind of applauded that because it's been something that even I've talked about for quite a while since I became a board member, maybe even before. Our teaching, we don't have a teaching program. And I've seen St. Lucie County has several daycare centers where their kids who are getting certified in early learning, I forget exactly what the certification is, but I think it's early learning certification or something to that effect. The teachers, because one of them is located at a high school, the teachers and the staff actually bring their kids to that daycare center. And there are adults teachers who are actually there, but the kids who are seeking certification in that area are actually providing the services there. And it's wonderful. I mean, it's fabulous. That's something that I have always thought that we could do better on. So to hear that we are moving in that direction, it just makes me very, very happy. I almost want to do it like tomorrow because there is a need nonetheless. I mean, we have teachers and family and, educators here within our own district who really would like something centrally located. Treasure Coast Technical College is centrally located, where they could leave their kid and, their babies, and kind of, pick their babies up, again, centrally located. And I think that would be obviously, if we extend it, the idea is to extend it to the communities, but if we could open it up to our staff members, that would be fantastic too. So I'm excited about that. I don't know when we'll be able to start that, but let's put that on the budget as a priority, at least from me, because I think that's just wonderful. Definitely something that this community could use. And maybe that could be a segue into teaching. You know, how do we get our kids certified, you know, or interested in the teaching education so that when they go to college or prepare them to go to college, they're going to enter into some teaching programs in the future. I think that would be fantastic. VPK kids, do they nap? Do they play?
Through the chair, yes, they learn through play. I do applaud my teachers for being very developmentally appropriate in their instruction. There is a rest time. I really encourage my teachers at this time of the year to really start to phase them out. However, VPK is an exhausting day, even for the 6-hour day, and many do need that rest opportunity. I have one staff who offers the opportunity to rest, and the rest, if you don't want to take that nap time, you can come over and we'll do small group. You can have an opportunity to work with the TA in a small group, myself, doing other lessons. So at this point I do, but yes, a rest is afforded.
I mean, I personally, I know nap time for little ones it's so critical, because if without that nap time, they're not going to be able to retain anything after the nap time. It's almost as if they're on, you know, a sugar high the whole day long, and nothing's actually retaining. So if once they nap and they wake up again, you know, they're kind of refreshed and they're ready to go. I mean, we just know it. I mean, everybody. Why are you smiling, Mr. Bass?
Because he wants to take a nap.
Am I right or wrong?
You need your sugar
That
rush,
applies to
Mr.
all of
Bass.
us, by the way.
Yeah, probably. But it's so critical with the little ones because they go, and they just need that time. You know, some kids don't know how to rest, you know, and especially when you're that little, you actually need to be told, go to bed, go to sleep. Even if it's 30 minutes, you know, it's still that power nap for a baby is just so important. I see smiles from people who are here and shaking heads because if you're a mom, you just know, like, that's just what everybody takes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And play obviously is something that I have been, I don't even know if Dr. Schiff and Mrs. Barenborg remember when we first joined, there was this, shortly after we became board members, there was this wave of concern that came to us from from some kindergarten teachers that were very upset because kitchens were removed from their classrooms. And even in kindergarten, right, play is critical. They have to learn how to communicate with other friends, how to pretend, how to use some of the manipulatives, which is one of the reasons why, oh my gosh, what is that program? The one with all of the, I can't even think of it right now. My son went to it and I can't even, Montessori. This is why Montessori is so successful, is because they use real live, you know, actual things in your kitchen, for example, to teach kids how to take a teapot and use a real cup and pour it into a real teapot. All of those kinds of things are so important. So I don't know if there can be, with all of these assessments, I mean, it just seems there's flickers and the readiness benchmark and STAR, and I started writing a list, and transition form and high impact standards and state monitoring too. There's so many assessments and tools, but I didn't hear a lot of the teaching and the learning and actually getting the kids involved in that. So I know that this is just an overall, you know, overview of the structure of the program. I just hope that, you know, in the classroom there's more creative opportunities for the kids, along with nap and play.
And through the chair, I would invite you, Mrs. Rosario, to come and visit with me.
Yes,
So
I
just
would
give me a
love it.
call and I'll take you over to some of my classrooms.
All
I
right,
have two
let's do it.
classrooms that, instead of a kitchen, they actually have working stores, or depending upon the theme of the month, they're dramatic play center is laid out based on that theme.
I love it.
And it was I want to say it was a hot chocolate bar during December, January. So.
You know, if we have any, oh, maybe Mr. Barefoot knows some people. If we have any people in the community who would like to invest in our community, as one of the things that I think that we certainly need, maybe even at the mall, is a children's museum, where they have all of these, you know, opportunities for kids to walk through a, you know, supermarket, all the little tiny things, a little shopping cart and so on and so forth, because it's just, it's wonderful. It's wonderful to see them blossom and grow, especially when they have to engage in conflict resolution with each other, you know? We don't have to get involved all the time. Let them work it out. I think I'm done.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So usually I don't ask a lot of questions, but you know this is a passion of mine. Having been a principal of an early learning school, having started with 1 pre-K and building up to 4 in just 2 years, because we saw such a need for it. And you know, talking about housekeeping, when I walked into my school, they had removed all the kitchens from the school in the VPK and kindergarten. And I actually went and got them out on a Saturday and put them back in the classrooms, because that's how passionate I was about kids being able to play. I think one of my great experiences of being at that school, and it was an F turnaround school, so there were some stressful times. I will say my best times, though, was getting tea with Marcus in the housekeeping area when I needed it. And Marcus was really great about helping me de-stress with tea. So it was pretend tea, but it was cute. And I think knowing that those kids are having that experience to socialize is so important. And people got away from that. I think we're starting to understand how important that is again, so it's nice. That VPK program you talked about at the high school, I believe at Centennial High School?
Through the chair, there's many districts that offer that. For us, TCTC will have their students in the high school program. They'll have time during their day to complete those dual courses. And then another part of the day will be going out into one of our elementary schools. But yes, those high schools typically have VPK classrooms on their sites.
That's what I'm talking about. There's one example is Centennial High School. And it's great because the employees' kids get to go to school there, which is nice. So thank you for listening about the new Dodgertown unit. I asked for that. I appreciate that. I don't ask for a lot of things kind of like that, but I saw that we need to put the spots where the need is. And I know that you did it mid-year, which is hard to fill. So I'm encouraged for next year. Also, VBE, we're seeing that we have that need. And like you said, we don't want to take away from the private providers, but we also know how many people are moving here and that we need to expand the number of seats across the whole county. So I appreciate the fact that the ELC is helping us partner with our private providers. I think that's key. So thank you for doing that and helping us with the four blocks program. The 4 block centers, you mentioned, I think I counted 17, and I was going to ask how many providers are there in all. I didn't hear child resources. I know they do a lot of super things.
Through the chair, Child Care Resources, they typically do the transition form. Mm-hmm. So I anticipate that they will come on as a 1 block.
Okay. And is there a list on the ELC's website for parents to see that right now? So it's already up there?
Through the chair, the list is there, the block designation is not there yet.
Okay, yet. Okay,
Yes.
good. And I think that's important for new parents that are moving into town. I've been asked, I think it was twice in the last 2 weeks, about that. People meet you and they say, oh, you work for the school board, okay. I need to know, where can I put my child in a pre-K? And I don't want to be the one that says, you know, this one's better than that one, that's not my job. But I think pointing them to some place that they can look is the best thing to do. So question, who do we work with for the transitions from birth to 5? Is it just fiddlers, early steps you mentioned, healthy start? And how are we doing on identifying all the students that have needs? And I'm not talking about the fact that we know all the time we have students moving here from all over the world, and we don't know about those students coming in, but how are we identifying at least the kids that are born here and or young, how do those parents know where to go and how are they identified?
Through the chair. So Early Steps is our birth to 60 days before year 3. Fiddlers is our 3 to 5-year-olds. Just all those people you mentioned, Healthy Start, pediatricians, teachers, church members, you name it. If they're noticing something, they're encouraging families. It is a difficult process. No mommy, daddy, grandma, granddaddy, they don't want to hear that there might be something wrong. So there is a lot of hesitation. We do encourage our preschools will recommend little ones as well. I always tell a parent, just please come in for a screening. Let us go through the screen. If everything passes, great. We'll keep an eye on you. We'll check in, or you check back in with us. But I would much rather a child come to me just before 3 than some of the students who are just now being staffed as an almost kindergartner. They'll come into my classrooms roundabouts April, and they're going to kindergarten in August. So just all that early 211, the coalition, they have their inclusion specialists. I mean, they're just, I feel, and Mr. Meyer, if you want to jump in, we do a really great job. I want our pediatricians to push a little bit more. They tend to be a little more, let's wait. But right now, a good majority of our students who are coming in for evaluation are meeting eligibility criteria for autism, a lot of physical delays, occupational delays, language delays. I mean, I would really highly encourage a pediatrician to say, just give the district a call. Just get that screener.
Yeah, I was one of those parents. And, you know, I wish my child had gotten that screening done earlier. And, you know, everything worked out fine. But I think had the parent know right away how important it is that they can at least go through the screener and then make a decision is important. So we need to make sure we're staying on that. That's why I ask that question, because are we doing anything like giving parents packets when they're having the children at the hospital and, you know, letting them know what the resources are? Because a lot of parents don't know. They're new to this area. They don't know what to do.
Yes. Through the chair, we've had a great partnership with Andrea Berry with Healthy Start. I think when Dr. Moore came in, we were able to create a new letter for the book that goes home that encourages that early literacy. I've done a couple of videos from their baby boxes to encourage that literacy. They're in connection with those new mommies for the first year and then some, so they're always encouraging that.
Have we partnered with other groups like the Buggy Bunch and places like that that are getting out there that parents know about, but they may not know about other things?
Through the chair, we have in the past, but you know, COVID-wise, everybody just kind of went. So yes, that is someone we would definitely want to connect with again.
Okay. How many transition forms have we received this year, percentage-wise, of our kindergarten kids?
For this school, through the chair, we have not received them yet. Our VPK programs are still going. We
So,
typically get about half of our incoming kindergartners, so about 600, give or take. But this year, having so many more on, especially with the RCMAs, Head Start always does theirs, so that's a good 200 to 300, plus mine. Ms. Mallett's, her Step Into K group, they do an additional transition form. So we'll get not only the end of the VPK program, because some of them end in maybe April, and then we'll get an end of June to see if there was any growth. So we're getting them throughout.
okay, because I know those are really helpful for our
Yes.
kindergarten teachers.
And our kindergarten teachers, Pat and I share that at our meetings. We make sure that the VPK directors and teachers know just how important those transition forms are to those kindergarten teachers.
Okay, you mentioned C to B. Can you explain that?
Sure, that's our, the IDEA. So Early Steps is C, and our Fiddlers is B. So my federal money for my little ones, specifically on IDEA B, we're actually, our little moniker is Baby B, because it's the smaller side. It supports a lot of our preschool evaluation team, some supplies, things of that sort. It's a small budget compared to B, the big B for K and beyond.
Okay, so you ready? I think I gave you a heads up on this one. So as I was in Tallahassee last week and watching a lot of those bills going through that are focusing on education and specifically early education, have you been looking, not that they're finalized yet, but have you been looking at how that's going to address concerns that you have? For one thing, I was thinking as I was sitting, I sat in every subcommittee meeting I could and on the floor twice. But I will say that I was thinking of new residents, because we have so many. As they come in, where can they go? And one thing that I thought of is the tax collector's office. Almost everybody goes to the tax collector's office at some point when they first come here for a driver's license or whatever they need. So are we giving them anything at the tax collector's office for identifying where to go for help with anything that has to do with early education or students in general?
Through the chair, I hadn't thought of that, but I will. And typically, the first call is to me. I hear you oversee pre-K. Will I oversee pre-K in the schools? How can I help you? And then it becomes, is it a coalition, depending upon the age, or for me? But yes, we can get some information in places like that.
So what I'm thinking is to show true partnering with the ELC and with private providers, working together to come up with something to put at the tax collector's office. I hate to say this, I didn't check with Carol Jean Jordan to see if we can do this first. Probably should have. Apologize if she hears about this. I will say that if we can do something like that, work with her, call her office, and see if we can work with that. So it's not just talking about what's happening in the schools per se, but also
Absolutely.
where can you go and what are your options in our county? That would be very helpful, I think, for getting the word out, is the tax collector's office. You can tell her I sent you. Okay, so what do you attribute to the 2020 gain on your numbers?
Well,
Because,
Chair,
we were in
that's-
COVID and all that.
That's one of the asterisk years, so Mr.
Yeah.
Meyer will be quick to point out, I'm surprised I beat him to the mic. There were so many kids that did not show, so the total, it's not a total data set. So jumping up to 58, everyone regressed back down going into the upcoming school year. So it's just that was one of the things that you proceed with caution, because the reality is, I think how many less students were assessed? Like 300 or 400 less students were assessed in a previous year. So, that's not a number that we put a lot of stock in.
Gotcha, and your slide on the SEL coach, is that person Kids at Hope trained? I keep bringing this up over and over again, and there's a
I'm not
reason.
quite sure. She is trained in many other things. She was a counselor at Sandy Hook, so she's trained in many different programs. I'm not quite sure about the Kids at Hope. I can connect with her and find out.
It would be interesting to see, because they were Kids at Hope, Dodgertown, which has the new centers, is a Kids at Hope school, and I know that she's been working there as well as other places, I'm sure. But the more we can get that same mantra of how we speak with children and what we do to be positive in their lives, I think is important. One thing I asked the superintendent for, and board members, I'm going to ask for this, for him to do this, is a report card update on all our report cards, but you mentioned a pre-K report card. Has the board been sent that pre-K report card recently?
Through the chair, you have not, but I will, especially as part of the 4 blocks, so that you can see all the different components and how they align. But yes.
Okay, and also, you said that we can look at the data online. Is there separate data for the cohort of kids, or 180, I guess you said, of Flickr's report that you work with? So we can look at that data and compare it to the overall data.
Through the chair, I can pull that for you. I have to hand aggregate it for you.
And do that through
But we
Power
are
BI.
working, that's okay. We are, and actually it was something I did start only because in looking at how my students did when they left, because we are a STAR pilot group of VPK, so the state offered the opportunity for private providers as well as school districts to participate in the STAR 3 times a year as we move forward with coming up with that our coordinated screen and progress monitoring, and we did. And my scores leading out, I'm very curious, did those scores hold? Like, I know that I sent 69% of my VPK students and pre-K ESE students to kindergarten at 500 or higher, and how did those scores hold when it came down to flickers?
I think that's important for the board to know because, we ask for programs to be added or whatever, and we're putting funding towards it, so we want to know, is it working or not? So I think that's important information. I wanted to say thank you for finally doing a dual enrollment program for our students. So one thing I noticed when I walked the Treasure Coast Technical Campus a couple of years ago was that you had a night program for people that were going back to get their GED. Thank you. I want to say GRD. I know it's not right. GED. And they were having a problem. One of the concerns I heard was, I'd love to join the program or be able to do this, but I have little kids and I can't get babysitting. It's too expensive. And I thought, what a great idea to have maybe even a night program there for that need. And it kind of serves two purposes. One, our students can get that experience they need in childcare, and those parents who are trying to get their literacy requirements met can get childcare. So that was just something, and I still haven't seen anything like that yet. You mentioned HB 49 and HB 7011. Those were last year's bills, correct?
Through the chair, yes.
So they're now state statutes.
Yes.
So you might want to say that because if you look one up, it's for substance 7011 this year is substance abuse impaired persons. So it would be helpful to maybe call it the statute now since it is statute. Not criticizing, just I do the same thing. I look at bills and I talk about the bill number, and then when it becomes law, I forget what the law is, but I know the bill number. So that's just something a little issue. Also, thank you for teaching math in early learning. We do teach math. It is counting, one-to-one correspondence, patterning, numeral recognition, among other things. And we do teach math, but I know looking at our math scores, maybe we need to look at that focus as well. Because math is critical and it's falling behind everywhere, so we need to look at how we're addressing that in even early learning.
Through the chair, yes, that is part of our second semester goals, knowing where we stood with numeracy. It's all over my board, and reminding my teachers, especially as we begin our data chats, to see where they are in their numeracy, to make sure we're keeping up and getting our little ones ready.
Okay, thank you. The reason why I had so much to say about this is because not only is it a passion of mine, but it's so important, because if we're going to get all of our kids reading by third grade, we have got to start as soon as we can with helping them address needs that they have. So we appreciate all you do. Thank you for partnering with us. Thank you for being here today. I know you enjoy being at school board meetings, so that's exciting. This was a nice one, so it's good. Mr. Rosario?
Yeah, I had a follow-up. I've had several, obviously, you know that I homeschool. So I've had several homeschool families come up to me throughout the years, I suppose, with little ones who they are choosing to keep at home at some point. But once they start, many of them who have noticed some developmental delays or some learning disabilities maybe, or possible learning disabilities because they're not tested or assessed in any way. They have asked if the district they could call the district at any point in time. I've always said yes, absolutely, but I'm not quite sure if you have considered making it, open, inviting for the homeschool community with little ones for that particular purpose, or encouraging them to enter into the VPK program. So what are your thoughts on that area?
Through the chair, yes. If a homeschool child does meet eligibility criteria, we will provide those services. Typically, it's done itinerantly because they're not in a program. It would be up to a parent if the child met eligibility criteria for developmental delay, whether they wanted to receive those services in the school, and it would change kind of their trajectory. But that, again, is a parent choice and a decision. but we are always here.
Okay.
And we explain everything to the parent and what their options are.
Yeah, so I was doing the numbers here, and if I did it correctly, with 309 VPK students in our programs right now, and about 1,200 that enter kindergarten, you know, that leaves us with about 891 students who are out there, not to mention those who might be coming in new as new transplants or into our area. It's a large number, and so you wonder where these kids are, but the assumption, if they're not here, they're at home with their parents. It's an interesting dynamic. So I always wonder, are they all homeschooled at this point? You know, 891 little ones that's a lot of little ones.
So through the chair, the 300 are just the one the district supports.
Right.
The other 800, hopefully, are out in our private sector, or they're joining us for summer VPK, or in a
got it.
private, faith-based,
Got it.
preschool. Yeah, the 300 is just school
Just
district
us.
numbers, just us.
Got it, okay, I got it. All right, well, there's still quite a difference between 891 and 1,200. All right, well, I get it now. And I also wanted to follow up with the Buggy Bunch. The Buggy Bunch is an amazing organization. They have a brand-new family center since COVID, a lot of people don't know, in downtown Vero, that is open to all families, with a little play area and educational learning going on in there. So I think that was a brilliant idea as well, to reach out to them as another resource to get the word out to parents.
Will do.
Ms. Berenborg, just, Ms. Flood, how many of our students are in Head Start programs?
Through the chair, approximately 250-ish, give or take. They did, due to structural damages and stuff, their Fellsmere campus is no longer in use this year. Those students have been moved to Douglas Head Start. But you can always connect with Angela Davis Green, who is the executive director of EOC.
Thank you.
And she'd be able to give you a more solidified number.
Thank you.
Next, I just want to thank Ms. Flood and team and guests for the work that you do. It really is innovative work. And when I say innovative, it is transforming the way in which we do the work, which ultimately will have high yield returns on the entire system in the community 3 and 4 years down the road. So this is not reacting to a reality and putting a Band-Aid on a problem. This is addressing the current realities, which are hard and complex now, while at the same time creating systems in order to ensure that we are that literacy capital of the nation. And I know we have a Martin County board member in the room, but so I'll say that louder, that Indian River County is the literacy capital of America. So just, you know, thank you. Keep innovating, keep creating. It is a joy to hear the level or the depth in which you speak through your areas of responsibility. And I hope everyone in the community has the opportunity to hear when it comes to this body of work. You are well versed and you are leading from the front.
Yep.
So thank you. Thank you. And Mr. Meyer will present our next item, which is the ELL plan.
Thank you, Dr. Moore, and I echo the congratulations to you, Ms. Flood. Thank you for all that you do. So, as previously mentioned, we had a wonderful opportunity to present a very comprehensive listing of the services provided to our English language learners at a previous meeting. And at that meeting, Ms. Malice did tease that we are required to submit every 3 years a plan to the Department of Education. And so this is the opportunity to discuss that plan. What you will notice is that it is a form template. They ask very tedious questions. Of course, that comes from their statutes and rules and their obligation to simply be compliance. But I reflect back also at the level of detail that Ms. Mallitz was able to provide a month ago, and how to the great lengths of comprehensive service we do provide assistance to our English language learners. And I think this plan does speak to that, but of course we can answer any more specific questions that you may have. Like I said, that we only have an opportunity to cover within this plan the portions for which they've requested, but we do so much more. So happy to answer any questions the board may have.
board members? Anybody?
I have,
Mrs. Rosario?
yes, thank you. So thank you for the changes that have been added to the plan. The parent engagement piece is definitely something that I think that, we can probably expand upon. I realize that this is just a template being sent to the Board of Ed, but how it actually is implemented here in the district is really where I think the rubber meets the road. Obviously, the parent parent access to the information, let me repeat that because now parents whose first language is not English, the access to the information at the school district, there was that information with regard to the technology piece that the parents get. Is that available at all schools? Is it not available at, how do parents have access to this translation technology? The other thing that was added as an update was the cohort, also looking at the cohort, which was just mentioned in the previous presentation. The first bullet there about listening and description of language acquisition, instructional strategies. After talking with Dr. Moore, that was a piece that came out of a suggestion that we absolutely need a language program, an additional language program. So I'm hoping that we can get that we will do the research for a good language program. I would love to see one that we can extend to our foreign language teachers, because it might not cost that much more to actually get, ESL and then possibly a foreign language part, so that our Spanish teachers might be able to use it as supplemental in their classroom with their students. So even if we were able to extend it to our parents of ESOL students as an option, it might be a great way to increase their language acquisition at home so that they can work with their kids. It might not be that much more in terms of cost, but I firmly believe that we need to extend those services in that particular area. But thank you for that. Thank you so much for your work, Ms. Mallitz.
Anyone else? Dr. Jones?
Thank you. I think the most important part of this presentation for me was the instructional models and what we're doing to help the students in each of these areas through sheltered English language arts, mainstream inclusion, with English core basic, and then the dual language. I know we have the dual language program, Dr. Moore, at Fellsmere, and I've had a lot of questions from parents on that. I think it'd be wonderful if we could have it in more of our elementary schools. But I do know when you get to the middle or high school, you then have to see where the student will go, where we could give them assistance, and do we have the personnel to give them assistance? So you're looking really at individual plans for some of these students, but I was very glad to see the instructional models that we are using for our students at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can I say something or no? Oh, you good? You want to say something?
No, I'm done.
Okay. Anybody else? You good? Mr. Barefoot?
Nope.
Okay. First of all, thank you for your hard work, Ms. Mallitz. We appreciate it. Question about the language program. Duolingo is free. Do we use that at all? Okay. I love it. I don't know about you. Have you used Duolingo?
I've used it, yeah.
Okay.
You can only get but so far with the free.
Right.
With the free access, you can only go but so far.
Okay.
You can't move to like those advanced levels or, whatever it is. But for the basics, at least from my end.
The reason why I bring that up is I actually went to a conference a couple of years ago when it first came out, and the app designer was there speaking. I got to speak to him. It was really fun. He made money on some other thing that's very popular. I can't remember which one it was, which app. But this he did kind of just to help give back to society. So I thought that was a really great thing that he was doing for, and it was for English language acquisition in countries that couldn't really get it. And he was also working on trying to get those places the access that they needed as far as the technology to get the access. So I thought that was remarkable. So that's the only reason why I bring that one up. Not that it's better than any other program out there, I just knew that it was free. So we appreciate all you do, thank you.
And those conclude the two items we have. And maybe I'll tease you up this time.
Okay.
The next item is the legislative update. I've had the opportunity to meet with Ms. Berenborg and be previewed, but we're about to get a very, very comprehensive update.
Oh, I don't know about that. It was nice, the FSBA conference was great. It was 2 days. Seeing that I had a free place to stay, I was there for the whole week. So I got, I think, a lot for our buck. But I was able to meet with a lot of people that I thought were of really good, to really help me understand where our platform is and where it's moving. That was what I based it on, our platform and FSBA's platform. That's the first thing I handed people, and that's the first thing we spoke about. So a couple of things that I included. One was the FEFP conference calculation that you see here. That's, of course, being batted around like crazy up there, so this will probably change. This is the update that we were given when we walked in. The other thing I gave you was the Gray Robinson budget highlights. This is the firm that works with FSBA.
Yes.
This was,
The email.
it was an attachment.
Yeah.
The other thing, I can give you a really colored copy if you'd
That's
like
fine.
that. I have extras of that. The other thing I gave you was the bills impacting school districts' budgets. This was from Dr. Danielle Thomas, handed this out. What she did is she went through every single bill and how it was going to affect schools, districts. Of course, that was changing on the minute-by-minute basis up there, and it's still changing minute by minute because, you know, I don't have a lot of, let's put it this way, my husband's not home, so I spent a lot of time watching subcommittee meetings and floor sessions, which I know is probably not the most exciting thing to watch, but very interesting how things are changing by the moment. The notes that I sent you and attached, I'm not going to go through it in specifics unless you have a question about one, but had some really great meetings, got in with some really interesting people. Senator Gruters is the head of education for the Senate, head of education. He leads the education committee for the Senate, so I got some time with him, which is nice. I did meet Jacob Oliva. And he has my card, and I have his cell phone number now, which is nice to have. But I will say that I actually specifically asked him about the math adoption books, and where are we with that, and what was being done with it, and how was it progressing. He did say that they are looking into concerns that people have, and he is very aware of them, and he had some concerns as well, and that he would be making sure that those were all looked into before those books were on the adopted list. Okay, so I did meet with him about that just
Which
briefly.
books?
All the math books that are on the math adoption list right now. We're talking math books. What else? Couple of, well, not just a couple, but a lot of bills have gotten updates in the last couple days that were actually voted on. So I won't give you numbers unless you want them, but the bill numbers. But the interesting couple ones that I wanted to highlight is the personal finance bills, I think, are going through, and that is adding a 0.5 credit for students to take a personal finance class in high school. Right now, they get 8 credits of electives. It'll back down to 7.5 because one of them will be mandatory personal finance, which I think is a great thing personally. Apprenticeship tax credits, and we're going to look into that a little more to see if that also gives a company tax credit for doing internships for students. So right now it says apprenticeships. We're not quite sure. Dr. Moore and I talked about whether or not that would include internships, which allows, for example, if we were to put a student that was in our welding program out to a welding company to work with them, would they get a tax credit for doing so, which would be very helpful for us because if a business is going to get a tax credit to work with our students, they'd be more willing to do something like that, I would think, and if they can. The parental rights bills are moving. Guidance counseling bills are moving. Drinking water filters, we talked about this one. Remember how we had those drinking water filters, especially when COVID first started, we shut off our drinking waters and the kids had to bring a bottle, and we had those filtration systems, but we don't have that many, and we tried to do a little grant and that didn't get approved, and that's being possibly funded mandate, which is kind of exciting that they might make that a mandate and then fund it. So that was on the Senate floor the other day, and they were talking about that mandate of funding. Required history of African American studies is going through. It's moving on the Senate side, I think. Appropriation bills are moving, some are not. Lots of different things, you know, students with epilepsy and seizure disorders, required care is moving, athletics requirements are moving. Individual freedoms, the HB 7, if you haven't looked at that bill, that's an interesting one to look at. That's individual freedoms, addresses discrimination, instructional materials, what the requirements are for us, and that includes library books, and DOE compliance review of professional development systems. So that's an interesting bill. Photo enforcement of school zone limits has moved through the Senate. So that's quite interesting too, whether put to photo cameras up at school zones. That'll be interesting to see how that's enforced. And then SB 1048, which is the student assessment bill. That's the one that's definitely going to be out there, and it's definitely going to be, it'll be interesting to see what the final bill looks like. But basically, right now, it's got grade levels screening and monitoring for every grade level, including VPK. It would be one screener for the entire state. In other words, there's not a menu of screeners that you can choose. And if we aren't using one now that's the state adopted one, we would have to change to the state adopted one. So that's kind of interesting how that's being talked about. Progress monitoring must be web-based and mobile device option. So in other words, kids could take it on a phone or whatever, I guess. I'm not sure how that's going to wind up coming out. Next year is going to be the baseline year, as they always do after they change standards. You get one baseline year, and after that, they'll use that to show comparison and progression. So there's an interesting one. I brought up workforce housing in every conversation I had. And the bill SB 1748, and it has a companion bill in the House, is homestead property tax exemption for classroom teachers. That also includes firefighters, police officers, people like that. But basically, it would be a $50,000 tax exemption for a classroom teacher on their home, in addition to their homestead. So that would help if a person has a home and they're on it, their name is on it. It does not help if they're like a newcomer coming here and renting an apartment. That's the one difference in what our need is, I think. There's another one that's an exemption for taxation for the district that's going through, and then there's the ED certification pathway for veterans is moving through. Mental health, there's a bill on mental health in the Senate that talks about involuntary exams of students in school and that parents have to be notified, so that one's moving through. And House Bill 1467, which is Senate Bill 1300, which is the one about school board salaries and instructional materials, which is pretty much a hot topic around the state. That was modified in the House. If you haven't seen it, they took out the salary part and they replaced it with term limits to 8 years. That would not start until November. So any board member that's sitting on the board, their 8 years would start in November. Okay, the Senate is still, it hasn't gone to the Senate floor, I don't think, and so last in a couple days anyway, I'm paying attention to that bill too. But anyways, it passed in the House on Thursday, as far as that part goes, with the changes that were made, and the changes were made in committee. The early grade success bill, there are lots of pre-K bills that I put down there and that I've had conversations with the writers of those bills, the presenters of those bills, and people that sit on Senate or on the committee on education. So I was able to get in with some very interesting people and have a lot of conversations, one being in an elevator. So I did my best elevator pitch I could for education. Any questions on any of that I gave you? Okay, you want to start, Dr. Schiff?
Sure. First off, thank you for the notes that you took and sending those along. That's really helpful. As somebody who did not come into this job well-versed in following legislation and understanding it, I've learned an amazing amount in the last 3 years, 3.5, whatever it is. But thank you for your summaries. I appreciate that.
Sure.
couple of questions on, in addition, well, I'll back up a minute. The parental rights bill, there's a segment in that bill that's being referred to as the Don't Say Gay portion, and it's only a segment of that bill that restricts conversation about sexual orientation or gender identity to those that are age appropriate and developmentally appropriate for students, while prohibiting a school district from encouraging discussions of those grades, those topics in primary grades. Did you have any conversations, or was there any conversation about that?
Actually, there's been a lot of conversation up there about it. I watched the Senate session that was on Thursday, and that was on the floor. So if you want to watch any conversation about it, you know, it's really exciting stuff, so watch the Senate. You can look at the bill, if you know how to do that, go onto the bill tracker, find the bill, just type in the bill under the Senate side, and look at the last spot for the bill. You can click on that, watch a recording, and it'll, if you look at the agenda of the meeting, it'll tell you about where you can look on the recording, so you don't have to watch the full 4 hours, 6 hours, whatever it is. And then you can find where that discussion is on the bill. I think that listening to that, it's not finalized. There's going to be a lot of more discussion and stuff. And I think it's moving on the Senate side. I don't know what's happening on the House side on that as much.
I will go in and search for that. I actually have the bill open on my computer. If you have a direct link that through Nancy you can pass for us,
Sure,
that would be really
sure.
helpful.
I'll be happy to do
For that particular discussion, because I'd really like to follow it.
Which bill number are you referring to? 'Cause
It's
there are
House
several
Bill
that-
1557, Senate Bill 1834. And we don't know where this is going to go, and there's been a lot of conversation about it. I just personally want to go on record as being vehemently against that particular portion of the bill. All of our students count, all of our families count, all of our parents count. And for students who have two moms or two dads or relatives in same-sex relationships, I do not want to do harm to those families by putting them in some category that is prejudicial, that in some way discriminates against those kids. And I, for me, just want to be on record as saying how prejudicial I think that is.
Look at the bill language, because I also know that sometimes you look at the bill language and basically one of the good things to do, let me bring it up so I can say the exact term that you need to do. Look at the, that didn't work. Look at the staff analysis. So when you look at a bill, it's important to look at, when it goes through committee, what the committee suggestions are, because as it goes through committee and is voted on, the committee suggestions, if it's voted on, that becomes the bill now. So if you look at, let's just.
I have the page open, so.
Yeah,
it's-
okay. So if you look at that, let me put that up.
Judiciary Committee, last conversation, January 25th.
Okay, so I'm going to pull up 1557. If you look at that bill,
That's the one I'm in, yep.
okay, go down to where it says staff analysis and look at the last one, 121. Okay, that'll tell you about where it's been updated.
Okay.
That's the latest update when you look at that. So, but you're looking at the House one. You also have to look at the Senate one, because,
This is House Bill 1557, and it links, right? It's tied to Senate Bill 1834.
yes. And if you go down to what the House, sometimes you'll look at a bill that has a companion bill, and you'll see, for example, a good example of that is the one I was telling you about with HB 1467 and 1300 on the Senate side, which is the one about school board salaries and instructional materials. They're very different looking right now. So that's why you need to look at both of those analysis to get an idea of what's happening with the bill. On one side, for that one, the Senate hasn't addressed it on the Senate floor yet, but the House has. So it's interesting to see how bills move on one side of the building and not on the other side. So that would be the same thing to do with that bill.
And I think we've discussed, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we discussed that in each of our meetings, as we are in session, that you'll provide us with legislative updates moving forward. Am I
Yes.
right? And
Yeah,
that,
especially
and-
right now, in the next
Right,
couple of
and
weeks.
that's right, because right now it's also pressing and it all has considerable bearing on how our work goes forward. Yeah, I would really appreciate those, and if anything significant happens, if you can pass that information to us and Nancy, that would be really helpful. I know we're all doing this on our own as well, but to have us at least make sure that we get the same information from you as our legislative liaison would be
Sure.
really helpful.
Sure, and hopefully, I can overwhelm you with this stuff. As you notice, there are a lot of education bills
There
that
are.
I'm tracking.
There
Matter
are.
of fact, I get alerts constantly on my phone because I've set up so many alerts on bills that I want to know when it hits a committee and a committee votes on it, so I put up that alert. Just so you know, if you don't want to get overwhelmed, one of the best things to do, kind of get a general idea of what's happening with a bill that you're interested in. Either put in the bill number that you're extremely interested in to track that bill, and go to the Senate and the House side and go to the last stop committee, which is usually the Education Committee on both of those. And that will give you where the bills are at the pretty much last stop, because they go through subcommittees and then they hit that as their final, most likely their final stop as a committee. Not always, but sometimes.
Right, and for those of us who came in not adept at following this and have become more adept, I probably still don't have, and I have communication with a lot of people, and around the state and with other school board members and with FSBA, and there's the FSBA update that we got on here was limited to a very small number of bills.
Yes, it
So
was.
it was nowhere near, as you say, all the education bills that are currently going through the legislature, which, to be honest, I have a little concern about, because I would rather know more than less and then be able to pick and choose what I want to pay closer attention to, as I assume we all would, based on our interests.
Yeah, and I think they're doing, they can be overwhelmed, you can be overwhelmed. After meeting with FSBA, I met with Danielle Thomas and Andrea for quite a bit those 2 days. And I will say I'm encouraged by their energy and what they do. And they also are very keen to how to speak to people and when to speak to them. There's a gentle way you have to negotiate these things up there. And I think sometimes, Mr. Bass, stop rolling your eyes. I think one thing that's really important to understand is that lobbyists are there for a really good reason. And sometimes they have a way of being able to get in to speak with somebody that we can't, and also kind of know all of the narrative behind it, not just what our opinion is going in. Because we look at a bill a certain way, like you just brought up a bill, and I don't like this bill because it's got this nickname now. But if you know the nuances of the bill and what's happening with it, that helps tremendously.
Yeah, and to be clear, I didn't say I don't like the bill. I didn't say that.
No, I know,
said I
you
don't like
didn't like
this
that one
particular
part,
section of
yeah.
the bill. I
Yeah.
was intentionally careful
I
in my
got you.
language.
So that's why I say that's a good way to look at it, is the staff analysis, because that'll tell you how it's been adjusted and changed as it moves through committee.
Good to know, thank you.
Sure.
Last one that you didn't mention, you mentioned school board salaries. You did not mention anything moving forward with partisan elections for school board.
That one's not moving.
Good to know.
Yep.
Good to know. Okay, thank you. That's all I got for now. Thanks.
Yes, Dr. Jones.
Thank you, Ms. Berenborg, for the detailed information. We're fortunate to have you and not have to cost the district a whole bunch of money to stay up there and get that information.
Sure.
As most of you know, I'm on the subcommittee for FSBA for legislation, and as Dr. Schiff said, it's not as detailed, but a couple things. Ms. Berenborg's information was much more detailed. I'll be watching that bill closely, 1557, 1834. I've said this several times, the most important policy we have is a non-discrimination clause. So I dealt with lobbyists and bills and working when I was at the FHSAA and meeting representatives and so forth. So it's very important to continue to watch what's happening because it could change from Senate to House and so forth. Mr. Meyer, and one of the things Ms. Berenborg said about the personal finance. Now, when I was here, we ended up getting financial literacy into the econ for seniors. Will that come out, or is this going to be a separate elective, or do we know yet?
To the chair, for what's proposed currently, if it modifies requirements to earn a credit or half credit, then a specific course would need to be designated for that. So it
Okay.
would not able to be part of
Okay.
another course because
Okay.
it becomes an additional graduation.
Because I remember when students went for dual enrollment to IRSC, they didn't have the financial literacy component in the econ, so they had to come back to high school just to do that class. So whatever it is, so the students know. One thing that they did talk about was a change for seniors this year. Dr. Warren, Mr. Meyer, with a concordance score, and tell me a little bit about that, because that did pass, and that was good for our seniors.
Through the chair, that was a state board rule. The state board is actually able to set, the state legislature sets overarching graduation requirements with certain exceptions. One of the exceptions is they delineated to the state board the authority to set concordance scores. So they took that power and they extended the year for which you could use the previous
Good.
cut scores and tests for this year's seniors because they were so negatively impacted by the pandemic and did not have the number of attempts that was intended in the initial development of the process. So we've already implemented this change within the district. I got a call from, I don't think I'm saying too much here, this is really good news actually, a call from Mr. Cummings this morning that this opened the door for 60-something seniors immediately,
Good.
which is just phenomenal. I mean, he said kids were crying. That was just,
I know.
just an amazing thing, a true good news story that changed the lives of some of these kids. So it was really, really a good thing that happened last week.
I was just looking at those numbers before this change, and I was concerned, so I'm very, very
And
happy.
Just to add that I think Ms. Flood mentioned during her presentation that this is the year in which students have been impacted the most.
Right.
So the FADS, the Florida Association of District Superintendents, is taking a stance that the same waivers that were in place and exceptions that were in place last year should be in place this year.
Right.
Because these students have been impacted significantly more than those who were before them last year or even the year before. So the expectation is that they uphold the same systems that were in place for the previous 2 years.
And so that was the PERT for algebra, is that one happening too?
Correct. So
Okay.
it opens up the door for the previous scores and to use the PERT. So
good.
it's both ELA and math. We will find that students are now able to graduate the same way as their peers for both of those.
The last one, and Ms. Baerborg, you may know a little bit about this. I was interested in the one where students who received a certificate of completion going into the workforce that say they didn't get the diploma because of a concordance score or a test. Did you hear any more about that?
No.
Okay.
I have not. I don't know what bill number you're referring to.
I don't remember either.
Yeah, because there are so many education bills right now, and some of them are very specific, and some of them are very, very, I don't want to use the word vague, general.
I just like that one for those kids who somehow, with everything we could do, they didn't get that test, so hopefully that will move on. Thank you.
Mr. Barefoot, you have a question? Okay. Mr. Rosario? Okay. One you didn't bring up, which I'm kind of surprised you
Okay.
didn't.
What was it?
What was it? The PCB PKA 22-01. It's on here. I wrote it on Thursday, February 3rd. I attended the pre-K to 12 appropriation subcommittee meeting. That was brought up as a proposed committee bill. That's what PCPB means, proposed committee bill. Focuses on virtual education,
Oh,
which
okay.
is an interesting one to look at, and proposes a penalty for the school districts
Yeah.
that voted for masks. So
Yes.
there are 12 districts that are in that mention, and we are one of them.
Yep.
And that's why I thought I should at least make it that statement. But, who knows what's going to happen? So we'll see. And
That's got to be one of the dumbest bills. That's the rep from Palm Bay.
Brevard County, yeah.
Representative Fine.
Yes.
He runs the subcommittee for pre-K 12 appropriations.
Right. Well, I would
I
just
was
say.
in the room when
Right,
that was
right.
announced.
You know,
It was
as a board member, I'm always going to make my decision on the basis of, student, staff, and safety. And I do not run by fear or threats. And I've been that way all my life. And I would be very, very disappointed if that happened. But our job is to have a safe learning environment for our staff and students, and that's how I would continue to do so.
Well, if you'll notice my note at the bottom, and I got this right from what his statement was, which is putting parents first categorical, that's what they're calling it. 12 districts would have 200 million removed from their administrators' salaries. Any administrator that receives above 100,000, those funds would be spread out among the 55 districts, ours being 1.3 million.
And to be clear, the reason I didn't bring it up is because I don't believe it's going to go anywhere. There's already evidence that it's not going to go anywhere, and there's some suggestion that it's a red herring to get other things into the bill other than this. So at this point, I think reacting to that will shortly become irrelevant. It is designed to get people's anger, and it's designed to produce drama. And I'm not interested in producing drama. What I am interested in is seeing how it turns out. And what comes in its stead, which I think will be more significant for us moving forward.
And that's why I said you just might want to track that one.
Been tracking that one.
There you go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and again, you know, when you said you're surprised none of us brought it up, for me at least, that's the reason why.
Okay.
This particular moment, I don't think there's a reason to.
Don't the 12 districts represent more than 50% of the students in the state?
That was Lauderdale, Miami.
You know, that's a good point, I don't know.
Was.
Because I think it was as high as 56%, those 12, because you got Hillsborough, you got Miami-Dade, you got Palm Beach.
Broward.
Palm Beach, there's a lot of
I
them.
mean, I think
Alachua.
12
Alachua,
12 were over
Devon.
50%, and I recall 56%. I mean, that wouldn't be the most intelligent move unless there's a, as you say, a red herring.
You know,
So,
I think we're almost at the midway point of session, so there's a lot that's going to probably happen in the next couple of weeks. Mrs. Rosario?
This is, I don't understand why it's being dismissed as, ridiculous. It might not go anywhere, but we were in violation of the order. Clearly, if we weren't, we wouldn't be on this list. We were for nearly 2 months. The superintendent received notice from Richard Conquerin and the DOE on this particular issue, saying, why are you out of compliance? Dr. Moore responded on September 1st with a letter to Richard Conquerin explaining that this school board voted for mask mandates during, and of course he explained that there was an uptick and that he wanted, and that the board decided, which you all received the letter, that the board decided on what the language would look like in our COVID-19 prevention plan. It wasn't until September, we'll get there, it wasn't until into September, near the end of September, when there was a hearing that Dr. Moore notified, maybe towards the end of the month of September. I'm looking at another email that Dr. Moore notified and said, it was probably about 2 days before the hearing, I believe it was the same week as the hearing, and Dr. Moore, at that point, we all knew that we were coming up to a hearing. We all voted to remove the mask mandate, and then Dr. Moore notified and said, this board has adjusted our stance on it and has removed the mask mandate. As a result of that, removing the mask mandate, the week of the hearing, I received some information that came in and said, why are we still, Indian River is still supposed to be on this call. I forwarded that to Dr. Moore. Dr. Moore immediately reached out to the DOE, and the DOE said, no, we received your memo, we just received your memo, your school district is going to be removed from the hearing. And so literally right at the last minute, we decided, thankfully, to remove the mask mandate. Therefore, we were not a part of that final hearing included in and with Broward and Alachua, and possibly some of these other counties. So from August, which we have all of the emails and all of the communication, from August until the very end of September, when that final memo was sent out, we were not in compliance with the rule, clearly, or we would not have been in this situation, or the superintendent would not have to respond.
You're wrong.
No, I'm not. I've
Yeah, I
got the
think we
emails
were
right
all
here.
there.
Okay, all right,
Mrs.
all right.
Rosario,
Board
we were
members,
all
board
there.
members.
We don't need a litany
Yeah,
of the history.
here's the
Okay.
thing.
And so-
Maybe this isn't the opportunity right here to air this. The only reason why I brought that up is because it was in the news.
This is a discussion, and I'm discussing.
It's a one-way conversation, and I'm not going to sit here and listen to you recite. That mask mandate was our mandate was for 2 weeks, where we said when it was passed, we will review it in 2 weeks, and 2 weeks later, it was lifted. And during that 2-week period, if you recall, we had to close 2 elementary schools and 2 teachers died. So for you to sit here and go on and on about a 6-week when you don't know what you're talking about, it was 2 week and it was very specific when we passed that thing.
Okay. On September 27th.
And by the way, we also got advice from council that we were not in violation.
Well, clearly
If
we were.
if you recall. And shortly thereafter, the new health commissioner withdrew the emergency order that was in the courts and issued a new one, because the one that was initially put out there was flawed.
Okay. On September 23rd, Dear Superintendent Moore and Chair Barefoot, September 23rd. This letter is to advise you of the Department of Health's
We
new
all saw the
emergency
letter,
rule
Mrs.
revising the
We've all read
We all
protocols of
got the same
controlling
thing, we
COVID.
all read it,
Can
we
you
all
please-
got the
Oh,
same
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Acted on
All right,
advice of
hold on one
We're
second.
not supposed to, protocols, we're not supposed to
Yeah.
interrupt.
Yeah. We're not supposed to interrupt.
Controlling
we're gonna listen to
COVID-19
the
in
entire
school
letter now?
settings and to provide you one more opportunity to come into compliance with the requirements established by the Department of Health. A copy of the Department of Health's new rule, 64 DER 24-15, is attached. It revises the requirements for quarantining asymptomatic students who have been exposed to COVID-19 and further clarifies the parental opt-out provision to foreclose the erroneous interpretation that a parent opt-out permits a medical-only opt-out. That provision now provides that the school must allow for a parent or legal guardian of the student to opt the student out of wearing a face covering, and so on and so forth, that it is the parent or legal guardian's sole discretion. And of course, the letter goes on, and it was shortly after this that we then responded in kind, or not in kind, we responded with removing our mask mandate. So we were not in compliance for quite a while.
Okay, all right. Mr. Barefoot?
Last comment, I completely disagree with your timeline.
I'm looking at the letter right here,
Oh,
I
okay,
know what the letter says, we all got the letter.
okay?
okay. With that, we're going to take a break. Let's take 5 minutes, thank you. We're reconvening. This is the Superintendent's Workshop. The next discussion item we have is Dr. Schiff's Board Protocol Amendment. Dr. Schiff is not in the room. Okay. I do know that she has asked the superintendent to look into, I think there were some suggestions. Do you want to speak, or do you want to wait for Dr. Schiff to come in?
No, well, I could preface the conversation. I think this is a item that I'll allow Dr. Schiff to present, but she did reference a producing request to board members that exceed more than an hour. And as this board has this conversation, I don't think there would be an item that a board member would request that I couldn't reach out and obtain the additional information to say what exactly is needed, so it wouldn't supersede more than an hour. So there was a request made. It took district staff 20 to 25 hours to complete that request. If I would have known it was going to take 20 to 25 hours, I'm sure I could have reached out to the board member who requested it and said, hey, let's problem solve this. What is it that you need? And I know without a doubt the board member said, absolutely, let's do this or don't do that. So to me, this is not about the opportunity other than the board to norm on what that process would be. In my 7 years in Miami and dealing with board members, as well as my time here, I've never had any confusion or concern regarding getting information that board members would need in order to fulfill their responsibilities. If the board has the desire of creating a procedure, what I did is have staff research some of the items that other districts were doing. I've had the opportunities to speak with board members about those items. Some of them, board members' opinions vary, which is, what boards do. No problem there. But I think the consensus was something similar to that of Pinellas County. That's kind of where I started, if that's the desire of the board. But as you have that conversation, I just want to caution the board that this is specifically about adding a procedure so the board is normed regarding the amount of time staff works. And I'll say it again, now that Dr. Schiff is here, if I would have known that request was going to take 20, 25 hours, I could have intervened. Staff does their work without question. They're absolutely outstanding, and they facilitated the request as asked and probably didn't think twice about it, to be honest with you. The board member who requested the information had no clue it took that amount of time either, because I didn't know it took that amount of time either. So I want to be above the noise, because that's not what this is about. This is about creating a system or process so the board can norm on its expectations of each other. So with that, I think it's appropriate.
Yeah,
if we could
Dr.
let-
Schiff, this is your item.
Sorry about that. I had an issue at home. I had to take care of it. Didn't go the way it was supposed to go, so excuse me for being a couple minutes late. Yeah, we had talked in our last, because of the issue that Dr. Moore just referred to, we had realized that when we went over protocols, we did not include in those procedures for board members to make requests specifically of the district for information. So we agreed in our last meeting and at our last workshop or discussion session and at our last board meeting that we would bring that back to the board for clarification at this time. So I bring it for that reason. I'd also like us to consider, if we have time and with the will of the board, another thing I realize I don't believe is addressed in our protocols is how board members address citizens at citizen input. And I realize that was not on the agenda for this, but I wanted to have the item be listed more broadly than only about public records for that reason. We can choose to discuss that now or not, again, at the will of the board, but we have protocols for how citizens address the board. We do not have protocols, I believe, for how boards address citizens at that time.
Actually, there is an item in here.
And,
I was looking for it and I found it.
okay, I'm not clear in that. Can you tell me exactly where it is? and
Sure,
I'll see if
page
it-
6, board meetings, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th bullet down. I'm sorry, not the 6th bullet down.
5, 6.
Sorry.
I'm not
It
seeing.
is about addressing, here it is. Here it is. Public participation, page 7,
Page 7.
second bullet.
Correct. Board members will not engage in direct back and forth conversation with the public. We know that. Instead, board members may speak specifically to items addressed during citizen input. The end of public comments without engage in dialogue from citizens. I would caution us, and this is where it's difficult at time for people to come before us, people who are not used to that environment, who stand at a podium, who look at us sitting on the dais. For many people, that's a really difficult and uncomfortable thing to do, and it takes a lot of courage to do so, especially for young people. When we respond, how we respond, and that we do so with respect and decorum, and not calling people out, not directly addressing other than specific questions that we may be asked, I think we need to be particularly sensitive to. I have heard from citizens who have come before us how uncomfortable they've been when they've been specifically addressed by a board member, and that may caution them from ever wanting to come back again, and I would hate to see that happen. I personally would like to ensure that we include as many people and as many voices as possible. And so that's where I am suggesting we may want to refine this or be more attentive to how we govern ourselves in respect to this. And I have a third concern, but I don't know that it's specific to board protocols here. But we have legal counsel for a reason. It is to give us legal advice. It is to give us legal interpretation in things which I'm sorry, I'm not a lawyer. I am not qualified to do this. None of us sitting here on this dais are qualified to give legal interpretation. That's why we have a general counsel. If we're going to do it ourselves, we don't need general counsel. But I'd like us to consider how we interact with and heed that advice. We express our opinion through voting. We express our opinion in discussion, but what we are not qualified to do is give legal opinion. And I'd like us to be very clear about that moving forward. Whether or not that's an item for our protocols at this moment, again, is at the will of the board. And I know we came specifically to address public records requests. But as we develop protocols that will outlive any of our tenure on this board, which I think is what's most significant about these and why they're so important, as things come up that affect the conduct, well-being, and mutual respect of the board for each other and for our citizens, I think these things are important moving forward. With that, we can move into a discussion about public records requests, and Dr. Moore has provided some information and looks like he would like to speak to that as well, so Dr. Moore, after you're done choking.
Thank Mr.
Those are
Fagan,
salty.
Mr. Fagan, I stole your cracker, sorry, sir. No, I just figured we would facilitate this the same way we facilitate protocols. I don't know if that's the desire of the board, but I did have Dr. Jacobs and myself looked at the feedback that I received from board members and try to craft what a system would be or a possible recommendation would be. So if it's okay, I could present what we wrote down. It doesn't capture the full consent of all board members, but I think it captures the consent of most board members, and this would be the appropriate form for board members to discuss if what I captured was accurate or not accurate.
Well, Dr. Moore, seeing that it's 2:30 and this is our last item, I think we have time. Do board members are okay with that to do now? Okay.
So Dr. Jacobs, you want to?
Thank you to our facilitator.
Yes.
In advance.
She's corralling kittens again.
And as Dr. Jacobs pulls this up, this is nothing more than listening and receiving information and trying to put something together. It does not, as I said before, it does not capture the will of each individual board member. So, but it is a point to start the conversation. And if it completely is inaccurate, that could be an outcome as well.
All right.
Go
Would you
ahead.
like me to begin?
It's all yours.
Okay. So this language, there's about 3 pages because it's written pretty large, but you'll see that some of it, the foundation was the Pinellas procedure that was shared with you all, as well as some of the feedback that was provided to clarify what request actually meant. What was the nature of the requests that were meant by this particular procedure? So I will just read it through once, and then we can go through and start getting feedback from each of the board members. So requests for general information, and the part added, not required to make informed decisions about board discussion or action items, should be requested through the superintendent. The board member should ask the superintendent if fulfilling the request will exceed the 1 hour time limit. If the information will take longer than 1 hour to gather and compile, the superintendent will work with the board member to narrow the request so it does not exceed 1 hour. If the request cannot be crafted to take less than 1 hour, or if it will require an expenditure of funds, the board member will present the request at a board meeting or workshop. And then here the language is a little bit different. So previously the language read that there would be a vote. So because you all don't vote at workshops, and it clearly says that it could be a workshop or a board meeting, that language was revised to say a consensus of the board is necessary to move forward such requests. And then also added the information that was requested by the board member will be provided to all board members. Okay. So we will start, Ms. Berenborg, feedback on this particular.
Yeah, I don't think any board member has, and I'm speaking for a board member, and I probably shouldn't, but yes, sir.
Can we ask Molly if that works first?
Oh, sure.
Dr. Schiff requested you should start there.
Yes, I agree.
Okay.
Thank you. I didn't really want to speak first.
And then go that way.
Thank you, thank you, Chair. So you're talking about adding this information to your protocols, is that correct? I believe that that would not be a problem if you wanted to add this to your protocols as a way to handle board member requests for information.
Okay. Want to start, Dr.
Dr. Schiff.
I didn't really want to start first either, despite that it's my, can I reserve the right to go last? Because, well, and here's why. Because I haven't seen this before, on first glance, it looks fine to me, but I know how I process, and it takes me a minute for it to register, and I don't want to say something yet without having really had a chance to think about it.
Would it be helpful to you all if I kind of post up this in 1, 2, 3, so you can see them all at one time?
Yep.
All pieces of the language, okay. So what we'll All right.
Mrs. Berenborg?
Yes.
you.
I am looking, do you know the date that Dr. Moore sent us that
I do.
email? Because I'm looking for it and I
You know,
can't find
these-
it, which is
the-
odd.
From like Pinellas and so forth?
Yes.
February 2nd at 9:54 a.m.
Second, thank you.
Wait. I'm sorry.
January 28th.
28th, 12/22. My response was something,
Thank you.
sorry. January 28th, 12/22.
All right, do we have a board member that would like to go first?
I'll go first.
All right, Dr. Jones.
Dr. Moore, this Pinellas County, this information, this was in their policy, correct? It was not? Okay.
It was, I apologize, it was part of their protocol.
I believe so.
It was protocol, okay, I'm sorry, okay. Well, when Dr. Schiff put this on the agenda, I was very interested in looking at this because, you know, obviously as a school-based person for many years and a district-based person for a couple of years, I'm very protective of staff time. And then I go back to, you know, why we were all elected in this position, and I go back to the Policy 124 on ethics. And I come back to this quite a bit to keep my focus. Board members share the primary professional concern for the student and for the development of a student's potential. That's our primary concern. And then letter C, strive to achieve and sustain the highest degree of ethical conduct to maintain the respect of and confidence of our colleagues, our board members, our superintendent, our teachers, and so forth. And I know in these times, you know, we're going to have disagreement, and that's okay. And we can agree to disagree with respect. But I do believe we should have something as far as a time limit. I like the Pinellas one simply because it was pretty simple, okay? If it takes more than an hour, I mean, I know that we have the opportunity to meet with Dr. Moore at least once a week. We also have the opportunity to call him or text him, and I think we all have the response that he gets back to us pretty quickly, along with his cabinet members if we have any questions. And whenever I email someone else other than Dr. Moore, I'll copy him so he can know what I'm talking about or what I'm asking. So when I look at Pinellas County and then the one in Wisconsin and so forth, I just think they give us information as far as what we can do as far as not taking up time. I understand that we have the right in our policy to request information to help us do our job. That's a given. But when it takes 24 hours with email and general conversations, I think we're going overboard. So I would agree to move forward with this once all the board members take a look at it, and we may want to shift a little bit of language. But I think we need some kind of protocol so that not only are we showing, well, I guess you could say respect to our constituents, that you know, people are doing the jobs they need to do. And even more so, these last couple of years have been harder, and we're working harder to catch up. So I'm very, very cognizant of that. So I would just say I'd like to move forward with something as far as a protocol, that if it's over a certain time limit, then it could come back to the board in the workshop. And I think that's a good dialogue or discussion if we have it. You know, we can do that if we keep our focus, you know, with student achievement and where we want to go. So that's what I have to say right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Rosario?
Oh, no, you can go to somebody else first.
I think Mr. Barefoot wanted
Yeah.
to speak.
Mr. Barefoot?
I think it's fine, simple is best. The only thing that I would, perhaps, and this would be the judgment of the superintendent, is that the information that's being requested be relevant to the business of the school board.
So the language that we did add regarding not required to make informed decisions about board discussion or action items, would that meet that piece of feedback that you're providing? Or is it more explicit?
It's probably okay, but, you know, Dr. Moore can make, as long as he has the discretion making that judgment. If Dr. Moore weren't here and somebody in that seat were vacant, I'd probably want it more specific.
Okay.
Hold the microphone towards you. Thank you.
At any rate, that's the only comment that I think, just as a general statement, less is more. Simple is best.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else at this point?
You want to go?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, we have, I have an issue with the consensus of the board. I have a question for legal. If consensus is not given on a particular item, for example, for a board member to receive information, would that be limiting to that board member's request?
If I understand your question, my reading of this procedure or protocol, however you want to say it, is that if the consensus of the board isn't there, that the staff would only spend an hour, up to an hour of time on that request, if that answers your question.
Yeah, so if let's say an item takes an hour and 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or 30 minutes more. Let's just say a request would have taken that long. But consensus is not to go those 5 minutes or 30 minutes, right? That means that what would have been received for that, given to that board member for that particular item would have been denied. That board member would be denied an extra 5, 10, 20 minutes worth of information that that board member would have needed to make the right decision, right?
It's me.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. My reading of this protocol or procedure is that this is specifically talking about requests for general information that's not needed for a board action item. So for a board action item, this would not apply. This would apply to more general information requests made by board members. And yes, it would be limited to an hour. unless staff can figure out, a way of narrowing the request so that it won't take longer than that, or else it would go to the board for a consensus if they want that information, so that they would be willing to, have staff spend more than an hour on it. Because the information isn't just for that board member. It would go to every member of the board.
But general information for what? I mean, someone's asking general information. We don't know whether that's going to end up in a voting item, in an action item. Someone may be doing research. How do we know what a board member is requesting that won't come to the board for a vote? So we are not asking, according to statute, according to our Constitution, and according to the government in the sunshine, it establishes the right for all board members to be able to receive all information that they are requesting, period. It doesn't say whether it, so long as it is within their constitutional duties and responsibilities. So if any of this information eventually winds up on a board agenda as an action item, for example, yet there is a roadblock over here because board members said, nope, sorry, you can't get the rest of your information, then that would be limiting, and that would be essentially denying a board member's full request. And they don't get the right, I don't get the right to deny anyone here. I'm looking at you because you just gave the legal definition, but I don't get the right, and I don't want the right to deny any one of my board members, my colleagues' requests for information. What should happen is that immediately the superintendent should call up a board member and say, is this what you want? Is this, just as he mentioned, is this exactly, whatever it is? It's more than an hour. What could we do to kind of narrow down your request or whatever? No one's ever asked for anything over an hour. I certainly did not ask for anything over an hour. What was presented for me in the request was way more than what I asked for. So let's just be clear about that. I also did not know that it would take 25 hours, as Dr. Moore mentioned. So for the first time in 3 years, there was a request that apparently was quite extensive. So that there aren't any, board member, let's just clear that. So coming back here, though, if anything is over an hour, my concern is that we would be denying a board member's request. Again, not knowing whether somebody is going to do research to put something on an agenda, for future policy change or future voting item or future charge to the superintendent. We don't know that. So could that be interpreted as being, Ms. Shattuck, could that be interpreted as denying a board member's request, even in part?
Thank you, Chair. So the way that I would answer that is that if something is not currently an action item or, on an agenda kind of item, because I don't think it just has to be action, I think it could be a discussion item too, that's when this would come into play. And you may say it may become an action item later on, then later on this would not apply, So that's how I would say that is, yes, it could become an action item later on, and then later on this would not be the protocol you would be looking at, but this is for a more general type of information requests. And also I would say there is some discretion there, right? So when a board member brings a potential request to staff, I think it would be incumbent on them to explain if it's more general information or if it is tied to an action item to show how it is tied to that action item. I also think that, the way this is written, it has kind of a couple of safeguards in it too, where, first it happens with staff or the superintendent, then as a, final, it goes to the board. The board could also decide, we do think that this is something that the board needs information on. Again, board members don't act as individuals, and they don't really have powers as individual board members. They only have powers working as a board. So we're not really talking about information that should only be interesting to one board member. We're talking about information that the entire board should find interesting to make their decisions as a board. So if the entire board thinks, this is not information that we need to make a board action, then that would be what their consensus would be. But they might not think that way. They might think, yeah, this is information that we need, in which case, take more time on it, give us this information. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, but it not really, because though I appreciate your thought on it, as you and I have discussed, we already have a policy that states that board members should not be denied what they are requesting. And again, even if this becomes an item for the board to vote on at a later time, that board member is still being denied information to make that judge. And I get that we work as a team, but several of us have to do research before possibly bringing it to the board for discussion, and then possibly obviously with the superintendent, and then to maybe a policy change or an adding or, an initiative. And that work happens individually. So there's still a denial. The Florida Public Records Law, Chapter 119, provides the right of access to the records of state and local governments, as well as to private entities acting on their behalf. It says that a right of access to records is also recognized in Article 1, Statute 24, which is the Florida Constitution. It applies to virtually all state and local government entities, including the legislative, executive, and judicial branches of government. The only exceptions are those that are established by law, and that, of course, would be those things that are exempt. So there are quite a few language that supports more of this. Section 24 reads, every person has the right to inspect or copy any public record made or received in connection with the official business of any public body, officer, or employee of the state, or persons acting on their behalf, except with the respect to records exempted, which we know there are exemptions. This section specifically indicates the legislative, executive, and judicial branches of government, and each entity or department created thereunder, counties, municipalities, districts, each constitutional officer, board, and commission, or entity created pursuant to law on this Constitution. So again, every person has the right to made or received to any public record connected with their official business. This denies that. This denies full access to what is being requested of elected officials.
Do you want to respond?
Thank you, Chair. I disagree insofar as we would read this in conjunction with the Public Records Law, and the Public Records Law certainly allows any member of the public, not just board members, inspection of any public records unless there's a specific exemption that applies. So that would still be true for board members. They would still be allowed to make public records requests on the same basis that a citizen could. This is treating board members differently insofar as board members don't have to make a public records request. They can make a request directly to staff, and then, other things that are pertaining to the public records law, we wouldn't be looking at, because under the public records law and under the board's policy, if a request for public records takes a lot of time, we charge for that additional time, which we don't charge board members for. So I don't see this as being at all taking anything away from anyone's rights under the Public Records Act. This would be, anybody still has those rights, and this is just an additional kind of protocol that would just apply to board member requests.
Well, I'll just end it here. We should not have any limitations. Our board policy states that no member of the board shall be denied documents or information to which he or she is legally entitled, and to which are required in the performance of his or her duties. which actually goes to what Mr. Barefoot was talking about in the beginning, requests for general information as long as they have to do with their duties. And that's what our Constitution is written as, that's what statute says, within our constitutional duties and our responsibilities. So no one's going to ask Dr. Moore for, something for personal information. Everything that we ask for is regarding our work and our duties as elected officials here. So I think that beginning, kind of with that not, with the negative not required, it actually should say request for general information regarding the work of the board or anything that is considered the responsibility of the board.
So if I may clarify, so the reason why that particular phrase is in there is because that means the information that is required for discussion action items, that doesn't apply in this situation. This is only for general information, not for the board, or not about board or action items or discussion items. Now, if my understanding is correct about board protocols, the reason these board protocols were developed was not only for this board corporate, but anticipating that in the future, there are certain norms, so to speak, that you would hope that boards would follow to ensure the most productive board conversations, discussions, work happens on behalf of students. So while this particular board may not have somebody that would ask for general information that has really nothing to do with specific items that would be for more than an hour, I could anticipate that some point in the future, there could be a board member that would. So in my mind, this is really not about the denial of information for board members, but more about, are we being responsible with the resources that the district has allocated to ensure that we are doing our work, which uses resources in a responsible way, just as we ask district staff and school staff to do their work that in a responsible way. So there may be many things that district or school staff want to do, but they know, you know what, I've got to do it within these certain parameters, and we're going to keep each other accountable to that to maximize the effectiveness and optimize the use of resources in the district. So as I look at this, it's not so much to me about this particular board or this particular superintendent. You could also, I could imagine, that you could have a superintendent at some point that maybe did allow board members to ask staff for requests that are excessive. So this is not really, again, about you all. This is more about the future functioning, the ongoing functioning of the board and how board members work together and keep each other accountable for the work of the district. So those are just my thoughts as I listen to you all converse about it. Any other feedback at this point? Ms. Berenborg.
I'm ready now. If you look at member powers, it's a policy, it's 0122.1. It says, school board members as individuals do not separately possess the powers that reside in the board. Board members shall have authority only when acting as a board legally in session. I think that's an important one because I understand I don't want to deny a board member's request for information. That's what I always have a hard time with that one. But I also think that, with that last request, my question is why?
It hasn't come forward yet.
Okay, so if that's the case, like citizens do that all the time. They request information because they're looking for something that they want to bring. And if that's the case and it takes umpteen hours, which I don't think you were aware of.
Nope.
Then that would be something that, had you been made aware of that you probably would have rethought that. But I also think that maybe to get around that and to stay by this, member powers, it says when authority only when acting as a board legally in session. So if we're in the sunshine and we're bringing this up at a discussion meeting, right? And a board member says, hey, I want a request, I did a request for records and it's going to take more than an hour. This is the topic. that I am looking for, that's all I need as a board member, to know that a board member is saying, hey, I'm looking into VPK situations or whatever it is. Then I'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, that, because we just talked about it in the sunshine. We didn't talk about the specifics, but we talked about what the topic was for the sunshine for us to proceed. Now, had or Dr. Moore brought to us, hey, this is going to take 25 hours, and a board's asking for VPK stuff, you might, as a board member, ask me, why are you asking for something that's going to take 25 hours of staff
That
time?
conversation happened already.
Between board members?
No, between him and I.
But that's my point, is that's not in the sunshine. That's what this says right here, is that we act in the sunshine legally, while legally in session. So if it's something that I think as a board member, we personally want information, it's personal, then I think there's another avenue to take. We can do a request for records, right, as a person.
That's not personal. This is work.
I understand, but my point is, if it's work, then why not bring it up at a board session and say, I have a concern, I'm not ready to talk about my concern yet, but I need more information, and it's going to take more than an hour of time to get that information. I want my fellow board members to know that I'm looking into some concerns that have been brought to me about VPK. I'm just using this as an example because that's the one that was brought to us today, was VPK. I'm not picking on VPK. But you may say to me, I want more information. My answer might be, I can't give it to you until I get the information. So I'm okay in trusting my fellow board members that if they feel like it's really important to them, and I don't know what it's all about yet, but they want to investigate it, that's one thing. But I think this allows us to not have a board member go rogue. And by that I mean, in the past, because I've been watching board meetings for many, many years in this county, that has happened, where board members have taken a personal, they want personal information because of whatever reason, vendetta in the past or whatever reason, they want personal information, and they're using their board member position to get that personal information. And I think that's, as a board member, I think that's when we step across that ethical line. And I think to remain within the Board of Ethics, I trust my fellow board members. And Ms. Rosario, if you came to us and you said, I have a problem with something, I can't talk about it yet, here's the topic, it's going to take, the superintendent says it's going to take 10 hours to do it, then we're like, oh, okay, we get that. I don't think I would deny a board member for a reason why they need to do something. But I do have concerns when a board member, and I'm not specific to what you requested because I don't know what you requested, but I think when a board member wants some personal reason for getting some information, then to me, that might be a concern that we're not doing what we said in our oath of office to do, which is to act on behalf of students and teachers and employees. But that's my own concern.
Dr.
Okay, I'm
Shipp?
ready to weigh in a bit now.
Okay.
And thank you, everyone, for your comments. Back at FSBA in December, there was a session on roles as board members. I don't remember the exact name, but the specific question the presenter asked is that in every action you take as a board member, you should ask yourself, is this child-centered or adult-centered? Is it working for the best interests of the children in your district, or is it an adult issue that doesn't affect children? I think to some degree that's a question we're asking ourselves here. And that's a question that is arising with this notion of how we get information. I agree, Mrs. Barenborg, with how you phrased and distinguished that if a board member has I agree with Mrs. Rosario, I don't want to deny people information. But I also agree that if it is going to take significant time and resources, that we act as a board corporate, which Dr. Jacobs brought up and Mrs. Barenborg seconded, and that we actually have a right to know that. That's our job. And so presumably the board member would have had a conversation with Dr. Moore to say, this is the information I want, this is why I want it. And Dr. Moore would then say, would make an estimate of the time and resources it will take to provide that. Without having to know the specific, outside of a context, I'm looking into X. I have a concern about graduation rates. I have a concern about student mental health. And I need some information in order to present that to the board. Dr. Moore says it will take 3.5 hours to get this information. I would like the board's consensus to do that. I think that's completely legitimate. I agree, and I would be content to move forward with that, because what, in that conversation, I would want to know is from Dr. Moore, the estimate of resources it's going to take away from him and his staff doing the work of the district, which is what we charge him and his staff with. I want to know how much time that's going to take away in order to fulfill this request. Most of us as board members want the work of the district to move forward as efficiently and productively as possible. So that's a long-winded way of saying I agree with you, Mrs. Berenborg. I actually agree also with Mrs. Rosario about the word "not" in the first sentence there, because I don't like phrasing things as a negative. So I would prefer to phrase that in the affirmative rather than in the negative.
Do you have a suggestion?
Well, I kind of, but you know me with wordsmithing, and it takes a minute. Requests for general information. Yeah, requests for general information required to make informed decisions about board discussion or action items.
Everything we request is required to make informed decisions.
Not necessarily, Mrs. Rosario. Not
Everything that
necessarily. As
request
Mrs.
does.
Berenborg has referred to, and I will speak for myself, we all saw the email and the amount of information that you requested on that particular request. Had that come to the board with the reasons for you wanting it, we might have said, sure, fine, great, go for it. But I have no idea why you requested that information.
Everything that you request is regarding board work, right?
Yes,
Okay, so everything that I request is about board
great.
work. So
But
you
everything
can't
I
deny that
request
of
did
me.
not take the district however many, 6,
But
8, 10
nobody
hours.
knew that it would take that long.
Well,
Not
now we
even
know,
him.
and that's
He
why we're
wasn't
having
even
this
told.
conversation.
Am I correct?
She's talking.
Yeah, this is actually why we're having this conversation.
Yeah, it's Dr. Schiff's time to talk.
Because we didn't know that, and that's what brought it to the attention of Dr. Moore and the board, which is why we're now having this conversation. What we are looking towards is making a policy moving forward that honors the work of board members, honors the time and resources of the district, and gets the work of the board done in the best interests of educating kids. And that's all we want to know.
Okay, let me ask a point, and I think it might help
Okay.
here.
And I have a second piece of that.
If there's an item that we put on here for a workshop, right? Let's say that there was a reason why she was asking for this information for a workshop item.
Right.
Okay, so that workshop item has now been posted, she's asking for this information, and it's going to take them this many hours. They know they're not going to have it in time for her workshop for her to be prepared to present it. So either her item gets postponed, because we have to have it now, this discussion in here to say, yes, go ahead, or no, don't go ahead, according to what this says. I do have concerns when a board member doesn't have the prep they needed for a workshop item. However, that would not be right there outside the limits. That would be within the limits. So then that board member would make the decision of whether or not, they need more time and put it off, or they want to stick to that time and it's going to take that long, but he knows he's got a deadline. So I can see where that can be a problem too.
I also appreciate,
Hold on, Mrs. Rosario?
That's why
I was in the middle of speaking.
I can certainly agree up until the second page where it says not to exceed 1 hour on the bottom before the if. Yeah,
Right here?
I would stop right there and ignore the rest, because at that point, that should be a one-on-one with the superintendent, where the superintendent comes to the board member and says, hey, this is going to take more than an hour. A board member is not going to tell him, sure, go ahead and make it, 2 hours. I want this. No, a board member is going to say, of course. When it was brought to my attention of how long it was, post all of that other stuff, I was like, why didn't anybody come to me? Didn't I say that, Dr. Moore? Didn't I say, why didn't anybody come to me? Why didn't anybody come to me? So at that point, there should be, I think that's an internal procedure that needs to happen between whomever is processing these requests, notifying the superintendent and saying, this request is taking, in this case, more than an hour, where the superintendent would then work with the board member to narrow the request so it does not exceed 1 hour. Beautiful, period, right there, I'm good with that.
So, May I just ask one
Other
question
things,
to think
though,
about?
I'm not good with because we don't know. I don't know if it's gonna come, maybe the research is not gonna get anywhere. You know, board members don't know if everything is gonna come to a vote. That's what the research is for. And we can't deny, according to Ms. Shattuck, we cannot deny individual board members shall not be denied access to documents to which they are legally entitled, such as budgetary items, in accordance with section 1001.42 Florida statutes, and which are necessary in the performance of their duties, such as supporting documentation for board action items. Everything else, we can work with the superintendent.
So may I ask this, if you had different players, and this is just to consider and reflect on, if there were different players, different board members, different superintendent, or some combination thereof, does that place the superintendent in a tricky position with board members who are his bosses? And you have a board member that does want to say they want to do lots and lots of research. So they're continuously coming and saying, you know what, I'm interested in graduation rates, I'm interested in DPK, I'm interested in this. Yeah, it'll take 3 hours, 3 hours, 3 hours, 3 hours. And then the superintendent's left to say, you're taking time from my staff, you're taking time from my staff, instead of the board keeping each other accountable for
No,
the use of those resources.
no, that's not the same.
I think you made a good point, though.
Me too.
It's just something to think about. Dr. Schiff?
I also think,
Not the same.
I appreciate Ms. Shattuck for pointing out that policies and procedures don't exist in a vacuum. The reason we have her here is because she knows them. She knows them better than we do. She knows how they interact with one another, and she knows how to interpret them. So while one policy may say one thing, another policy clarifies that, or expands on it, or limits it. So thank you for your guidance in that. I appreciate that. I agree with, Dr. Jacobs. I think what is incumbent on us here is to think about moving forward. You know, we will not be this board for perhaps past November, we don't know. But what we are trying to do is create something that works for boards that come after us, because we've recognized the limitations of not having that for ourselves. And so the latter part, and I'm sorry, Mrs. Berenborg, your head's in the way, so I can't quite see it. If the request cannot be crafted to take less than an hour, or if it will require an expenditure of funds, the board member will present the request at a board meeting or workshop, a consensus of the board, et cetera, speaks to this point, speaks to the point of the board operates together and frankly, wants to honor the requests of other board members. I value the expertise of everybody else here. Mrs. Berenborg knows more about legislation than I do. Mr. Barefoot, somebody's name. Mr. Barefoot, knows more about certain financial intricacies than I do. I benefit from that knowledge. I am by no means, I don't want to limit it. I want to learn from it. I want to benefit from it. But I want to benefit from it in a way that serves our jobs, that serves our student, that serves our district. And I think that's what this policy is asking us to do.
Dr. Jones?
Okay, just a little follow-up. When I was looking at our policy 149, and Ms. Rosario did state this earlier, individual members of the school board do not possess the powers that reside in the board, but no member of the board shall be denied documents or information to which he or she is legally entitled and which are required in the performance of his or her duties as a board member. So when I look at the original request, I'm not going to look at 3, 4, and 5 because they got a little bit more specific. But when you're requesting for all email conversations sent to all board members and district staff and cabinet and Dr. Moore from September through November, 3 months, in all email conversations from Dr. Moore to board members from September through November for 3 months, will we receive a follow-up since our email is part of your, request? Again, 3, 4, and 5 go into a little bit more details, but if I made a request like this, I would like to follow up with the board on what I found and what were you looking for so that we are informed of what was happening from September through November in your request for our emails.
So you want me to respond?
Yes, I do, I do.
Okay, so
I
let's
think
start. This was a
At this point, it's
financial.
really up to you, because I'm facilitating, and I feel
This
like
was
this is
a-
I
kind of
just want to
off
make
of
sure
the-
we have a follow-up for those 3 months of our emails.
Well, this was financial requests as well. This wasn't just about donations or anything like that. There was a financial purpose for it. So let me share, since we're going to share here, since I'm not done with my research in reading everything, this came to us. Here, not came to us. This was on social media.
Mr. Rosario, could I just ask one question on this?
Hold on.
And I appreciate that. It's just that number 1 and 2 didn't say anything
I'm
about
not done.
finances.
I'm not done.
Okay, well, I wasn't either with my presentation,
You
so.
gave me two, okay.
You could give it to the superintendent.
Let's go with this.
Oops.
Dr. Jones, you were speaking about the specifics, and I think she wanted to address the first one. That's why she responded. So do you want to say all of it first and then have her respond to everything?
Well, yeah, I mean, I understand in her request on 3, 4, and 5 as far as the information that she was requesting. But 1 and 2 had said nothing about financial. It said nothing about what we corner in on. It was all email conversations to district staff, cabinet members, and Dr. Moore from September through November. If it was regarding financial, I would have understood that a little bit more. It was not. That's all I wanted to say.
Are you done?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
All right, so since you're going to get piecemealed information, because I'm not done with all of my research, to partly respond, there was a post here that is right in front of you that says, thanks to the School District of Indian River for the hundreds of Thanksgiving items that your departments collected that will allow us to feed over 800 meals for those in need. Constituents responded to me, sent this to me. Constituents are concerned, were we spending taxpayer dollars on personal donations? According to what you see here, this kind of looks like a whole lot of food that was given. And so in response, I had a conversation with Dr. Moore. I shared this with him. I got, we'll look into it. Maybe some waters were donated, I don't know. So then therefore, there were all of these requests because I needed to do more research on it. I wasn't getting the information. Everything was done appropriately. Wasn't getting the information that was requested. And so this here will talk to the information that I was requesting to do my research. And again, you're going to get piecemeal because it's not all completed. Number 6 actually talks about the finances. Some of the financial things might have been in the emails. Some of the conversations about how this actually occurred, who made the request, where is this money coming from, would come from emails. The tax forms, no tax forms were collected, no itemized lists were given. There's a lot of information here, as you can see from if you all downloaded the information and read it, you would see there's still information that is still missing that we do not have. Where personal items, some people were wondering why we were using our truck to make a delivery to someone's personal home during our work time. You want to talk about resources. Why are we using our workers to make deliveries to someone's personal home without board members approving a donation? So we can bring this full circle. But I'm not ready to make that decision yet because I haven't done all the research yet.
Mrs. Rosario, what I think we've learned is that it was $70 worth of water. The rest was all donated.
Post.
All of this about our emails to Dr. Moore,
This is-
about tax forms, is a simple conversation with Dr. Moore.
It did happen, that simple conversation, and that conversation went nowhere, is what I just said that. The conversation went nowhere, so therefore the request was made.
So it sounds to me like the request was, what did we donate, how was it delivered, and what was the cost? Sounds like that was the request.
The request was made.
But it sounds like the request could, in writing, have been that same thing.
It could have, but I guess it wasn't, so,
I guess
you
it
know,
wasn't, which it then
your-
took, I don't know, 10 hours, whatever it took?
No. The request was made, it was not delivered, and so therefore another request was actually in writing.
I'm going to intercede with a point. Maybe getting back to this, because I think we're veering off topic a little bit, that if you had brought that up, though, maybe at a board discussion, and say, hey, I'm looking into a concern I have, da-da-da-da-da, you know, I would have said, hey, I was asked if we can donate water. I just passed that on to the superintendent and said, are we able to donate water? Is it legal? Do we have water? Is it about to expire? Is it something that our kids need versus something that we can donate to the homeless? That's the way it was asked for. That's how I asked him. I said, it was brought to me, can the district do this as a constituent that asked me for it? I said, I will look into that. I asked the superintendent, is that something we can do legally? And all those other things that I brought up. And that's how it initiated the water. So, you know, I didn't want to do anything that was going to burden the taxpayers and use our finances and our
But we don't know that.
equipment.
Did you see this? Hundreds, this is how it came to us. It didn't come to us before. It came to us as, not to you. It
Okay.
was posted as, we delivered hundreds of items to feed 800 people. So clearly, we have constituents who are concerned about that.
Sure, but
It
my
also says
point
that
is,
your department's collected.
yeah, but my point is, if you had a concern about it and you came up to us and discussed it like we are now, and you brought this up to me like we are now, I would have said, yeah,
But
I
my,
have concerns
but
about
my,
that.
my primary conversation is to this, with the superintendent, not with you all. My primary first
Mrs.
contact
Rosario,
is
I'm going to
Mr.
come back to
Mr.
the item
Dr.
that we're looking at, though.
But
Okay,
that's
I get
what we're
that, but
talking about.
I get that. You said your primary was with him, right?
Yes.
But you didn't get what you wanted, so instead you did this records request, right? So that's where we are right now. We are, a board member's frustrated with the response from the superintendent. What can that board member now do? Well, I have 4 colleagues that I'm frustrated about something. I want to discuss it on the dais and talk to you about it and say, I'm concerned about this. And then we all can say, I think we need to look into this for sure. You know, had you brought it up about that, and that was the concern? Because I asked, I didn't have any idea why that request was done. And I couldn't know, right? Because you can't tell me. So, but you can tell me in a discussion. And I think to have that up here, so a board member's concerned with something, they didn't get what they wanted, they want more information, I wouldn't have denied you that. Not in a heartbeat. I would have said, yeah, you need more information. So I think that's the thing, is coming back to this. Now, let's not use this item, but let's go on to the future. You know, to get away from that, if we will have a board member that's frustrated and asks for information, I'm going to tell you, I was frustrated in the past and asked for information that I didn't get. And it's like, oh, okay, what can I do about that? I can bring it up to my fellow board members.
Well, and I think the point here, which is important, is that the reason we're doing this is because we've learned, and this came up numerous times as we were discussing protocols. Many of us in our short tenure here have experienced, have had the experience where we didn't have a rule about something, where things occurred in the past and we didn't have a structure for how to respond. The only way we...
Excuse me 1 second. We did mention in our protocols that we're going to actively listen.
Did I miss something?
No,
I am actively listening. I can repeat everything that she's saying.
okay. I don't text on my
It's
phone
fine.
while another board member is
I'm not worried
talking.
about that. But my point is, the way we move forward as a board, both for this board and for boards in the future, is that we learn from our experiences. We learn from what's happened in the past, so we develop strategies, criteria, policies, protocol in order to avoid it in the future. That's all we're doing. That's the point of what we're doing here. To your point, Mrs. Barrenborn, can we move on and have something so that this won't come up again in the future? That's what we have learned from this experience and what we hope to take forward to prevent future boards from struggling over and spending this much time on.
I agree. Get back to the point there.
All right. So I'm going to suggest that we start going through this line by line to see if we can come to some consensus on a process. I did hear your feedback loud and clear about the not, so I have taken the not out. So it would read now as request for general information outside of the information which is required to make informed decisions about board discussion or action items should be requested through the superintendent, period. Okay? So,
I'm sorry, Dr. Jacobs.
Sure.
To be a
that's
pain.
okay.
The only thing that challenges me about this, and to this discussion, is that we don't always know that. When the information is being requested, it may be with the intent to bring something forward in the future
Okay.
that may or may not result in a discussion or action item coming forward. That's my only concern about how we structure this.
Okay. So
But I don't disagree with
one
what you
thought
said.
is,
I can live with it.
I think that's, in looking in through the different protocols from different districts, I think what theme I kept seeing, it was not that the individuals developing it don't want board members to have the information they need for even potential items coming. It's more of, can we make sure that those requests are reasonable? So there's a certain time limit on those requests that aren't actively. So if there is an action item or a discussion item, this doesn't even apply.
Correct.
The
That
1
is
hour doesn't
action.
even apply.
That's action right there.
Right, if they're outside the information, which is an action or discussion item. So if it's an action or discussion item, then if it takes, so for example, we just had a presentation on early learning. And so that probably took Ms. Flood 5 or more hours to create that. There's no time limit on that. So if somebody requests it, says, I want to know more about one of the board members' early learning, okay, it's going to be a discussion item or whatever, it's going to be a presentation. It took her 5 hours. It doesn't have to come to this process. The only thing that would come to this process is general information that is outside those action or discussion items. And then it doesn't mean you can't request the information, it's just a time limit. Now, it could be that the other thing is that the board discusses this at a workshop or a business meeting, and somebody says, well, you know what, I've had this concern about whatever it might be. I don't want to tag it on one thing. It is going to take 2 hours, but here's the rationale. Or it's going to take 3 hours or 4 hours, but I see this coming down the pipe, and I really think we need to get in front of this. The board can then just say, yes, yeah. Even though it's not an active item, those hours are probably well spent for us as a board to be informed about that. So that's something to think about. And I hope that distinction is clear here, that this isn't for action or discussion items or presentations, those types of things. This is just for general information that has nothing to do with it.
General information to make informed decisions about board discussion or action items. Board discussion or action items is right there.
Well,
Board-
requests for general information outside of the information which is
Outside of the information which is to make decisions.
which is needed to make informed decisions.
Yeah, that doesn't sound, everything that I have requested is within.
But we're not
to
talking
make
about
a
you,
div-
Mrs.
It just doesn't,
Rosario.
I don't know, I don't like the way that's worded. It doesn't sound
I think
outside of the information which is required.
Let's take a vote on how it's worded.
Doesn't make sense.
So we can I can work on it more to get the language a little bit tighter. If that's the case, it is reading a little awkward, but requests for general information that
Just
is
say
not
required.
needed
It's
to
not part of-
inform.
All right, let's just stick
Just
with the
say
not.
required. Just-
Simple.
Why
It might
not
be
just
not.
say request
Really?
for general
Let's just go back
information
to the not.
required to make informed decisions?
Because it's not the general information required. That information is given. So if it's discussion action items, this does not apply to
Doesn't
that.
apply.
That's what we're trying to do.
It says discussion and action items.
But you've got to read this language up here
I'm
along
reading
with
it. I'm reading it.
I just think wordsmith it and see if you
Okay.
can come up with something that is a little clearer.
Okay, I will do that. All right, then the next sentence, the board member should ask the superintendent if fulfilling the request will exceed the 1 hour time limit. Feedback on that?
Is 1 hour sufficient with everybody?
Frankly, I'd be willing to go 2, but I have less of a overview of how staff time is allocated than the superintendent does, so I would want his input on that.
Dr. Mora?
I think you
fine. I've worked with every single board member here on items that they have put together, which have taken multiple hours. That's not general information. I've worked with other board members with areas or committees that they're on that exceeds 1 hour. That's not part of this. This would be requests not aligned to items or committees that you're serving on within your responsibilities that are coming for a vote. So
Well, then
if
maybe
it's
that's
1
what-
hour or 2 hours is fine, and I'm
Actually,
trying not to speak too much because I'm gonna lose it. But as I said before, there's not an item in which when the question comes or proffered, I'll have this issue. In Miami, board members had staffs. This was never a problem. So when it comes as a genuine request, we can put this in place, but as long as I am here, I don't think it's going to be an issue. But as you said, it supersedes me in terms of I will not be here forever, nor will these board members.
I'm okay with the 1 or 2 hours, but I just think getting this, again, wordsmithing will probably help, because it's kind of hard to do it, right on your feet like that. But I think we all acknowledge the fact that we don't want to take up a lot of time as staff members. 98% of the time, probably Dr. Moore answers us, we might have a little bit of follow-up. We just want to continue to protect staff time.
All right. So I'm hearing 1 or 2 hours. Mr. Barefoot, do you have any feedback about that?
I said in the beginning, less is more.
Okay.
I mean, this whole conversation is, well, never mind.
Ms. Rosario, 1 or 2 hours, do you have a thought on
either
that?
one.
Okay.
What I,
Ms. Berenberg.
sorry, what I would add is what Dr. Moore just said, that none of this, then I guess a caveat, or how you want to add it in there, is that this does not, what did you say? This
Not
does
aligned.
not, this is not with regard to items that we are voting on.
Right. So I have
That we don't have.
I'm trying to capture it, we're trying to wordsmith it. I thought,
Action items, we vote on all action items. We
right,
don't-
and that's, so it's saying you have the information, you can have the information for action or discussion items. This does not apply. So what I thought in listening to Dr. Moore say, so requests for general information not aligned to board discussion or action items.
It's fine.
That's good.
It's more simple? Okay.
I got a closing statement, too. Sorry.
Not aligned to board discussion or action items should be requested through the superintendent.
Yeah, that's what we
Does
do.
that sound better? More simple?
Simple.
Okay.
Mr. Barefoot's right, simple.
So it sounds like if there's no real strong feeling either way with the 1 hour, we can leave it like that, because this is really just for the general information. If the information will take longer than 1 hour to gather and compile, the superintendent will work with the board member to narrow the request so it does not exceed 1 hour, which
Right.
is kind of like that next step of problem solving.
Right.
Of, we might be able to get into the hour, and I'm sure if it was just a few minutes over an hour, it would, that could be problem solved through. Any thoughts, changes to that piece? Okay. If the request cannot be crafted to take less than 1 hour, or if it will require an expenditure of funds, the board member will request at a board meeting or workshop. And so because it said both board meeting and workshop, and again, we use Pinellas County as kind of that foundation, that's why consensus is in there and not a vote. And I think it lends itself a little bit more to discussion and allowing the requesting board member to essentially say, this is why, I want to request this information. And I think, board members can ask questions so that they feel comfortable that they're understanding that. Any recommendations on that? Okay, and then a consensus of the board is necessary to move forward such requests, and the information that was requested by the board member will be provided to all board members, which
He does that now, yeah.
I think we've heard that loud and clear for feedback.
I think we already have that in place. Anything
Yes.
that's
It does
given
that
to one
now,
board member is given to all board
But it's nice to
members.
have it in there.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay.
I think we're good. Okay.
Through the chair, I'll wordsmith that. We'll put it back out, send it out to board members, and then we'll bring it back to our upcoming board meeting. And that exhausts our agenda.
Okay.
One quick second.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Dr.
I want
Schiff.
closing
Dr.
statement.
Jacobs, oh, now I can't see it because I saw it like half an hour ago. There's a typo. Oh, on page 7, around public participation, a bullet that starts, board members will not engage in direct back and forth. N should say citizen input. Input should not be capitalized. At the end, public comments without engaging in dialogue with citizens. So just a quick read. Without engaging, it says without engage in dialogue. It's just a typo. But I do, huh? No,
No,
I'm on something totally
this
different. No,
policy.
not that. No, a different thing.
Protocols.
But I wonder, and I ask my fellow board members if we want anything in there about how we, yes, we won't engage in back and forth. But I have seen it in the past, prior to when I was a board member, that ways that board members have sometimes engaged with people in the public has been really inappropriate. They've been made fun of, they've been maligned, they've been spoken down to. I would like it to be really clear, that is not what we do. And we don't, if a citizen has a particular experience, we don't get to tell them that experience is wrong. Or if they have expertise in a particular area, until we are clear that we have greater expertise, we don't get to tell them they're wrong. We get to listen, that's our job. And I'm wondering if we want to add anything in that further than will not engage in direct back and forth, but something about, I don't have it wordsmith, I suppose I should have thought of that before. But something that acknowledges how we respect the voice of those who
Yeah.
take the time, make the effort, and have the courage to come speak to us, and we will engage with them with deep respect, basically.
Under meeting expectations, we have school board members are expected to model appropriate behavior, including courtesy, active listening, and respect. Do we need more, Dr. Schiff? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
All right, I guess not. Although I would like us to hold each other accountable for that when we're not doing it.
I
Yes,
just
Dr. Jones.
want to make a statement. You know, I've been on the board about a year, 14 months, something like that. You know, we've done a lot, master board training, protocols. What we did today, not easy. I'm telling you, not easy. But I think when you look across at the 5 of us, we complement each other pretty well with our expertise. So these are the kind of things that we keep our focus on with student achievement and honor our protocols and master board training and respect. I think that we will just continue to move forward. This kind of dialogue is not easy, but I respect us for doing it. Thank you.
All right. With that, I have a couple of things to just let you know about. I sit on zoning and planning, and there is going to be an interesting workshop coming up that board members might be very interested in looking on. It'll be televised, but you can also attend and speak if you'd like. It's the County Visioning Workshop. And what that is, it's on February 24th, is this lateral line west of, I think it's 66th, right here, is zoned agricultural. There is a push to change that for more construction. And so that discussion will happen on the 24th at the Indian River County Commissioners' Chambers. So if you're interested in either going and speaking as a citizen, or you want to watch it or pay attention to that, that's going to happen on the 24th.
Of this month?
February 24th at 7 o'clock at the Indian River County Planning and Zoning. If that changes or whatever, I'll get information to Nancy so that you're all aware. And that's part of why on, I don't know if you noticed, but on the agenda for business meetings, I actually put in a subject line there for added committee reports. And that's where we can put that kind of stuff in there. We all attend different committees, we all sit on them. Sometimes nothing happens or whatever. is nothing to report, but at least those placeholders are going to be there, because I don't think the public is aware that sometimes we do sit on all these other things. And I had somebody actually saw me at Indian River zoning planning and saw I was sitting up on the dais and said, why do you do that? I thought you were on the school board. So I think it's important that we put that in there too as a placeholder for all of us to be able to give a report on what's happening with the different committees.
Terry,
Yes.
just on that envisioning, they had one on February 3rd. And
Yes, that was the first one.
there are 107 people in attendance and somewhere between 50 and 60 online. So there's a lot, and the topic's a little different, as you point out, because I go to all those meetings. And there is a lot more than usual interest in these discussions, so you might find it particularly interesting as they talk about, and it's not unrelated to the school district as it looks at the demographic trends and some of the discussions and the studies that are being done as to what the impact might be as what has traditionally been agricultural land is turned into either commercial or more residential.
Exactly. So that's going to be an interesting look at how our county might shift in its thinking. So the other thing is, just in retrospect of what we discussed today, I'm letting you know that I had requested this superintendent to put report cards on a future discussion for us. I don't think we've looked at report cards in a while. And I think that we need to for this next year. I'm not talking about report cards this year. I'm talking about with the new standards and the new assessments that are coming, we probably need to ask him to revisit that and bring a report to the board.
Can I clarify that you're asking for school report cards,
Yes.
not individual student? We don't really do cards anymore, it's all online, but.
Well, but we need a report as to what's happening with report cards for schools, cards, how we do it with students. That needs to be made aware. We have new people that move into our county all the time, and it would be nice to make sure that we've updated what we do out there, because I've had lots of people ask me for that. So I think that's an item that we need to revisit. So Superintendent, you're hearing me loud and clear on that one. The other thing I asked for is, we've had some athletes for many, many years go to state and get really cool state finishes. We just had the weightlifting team, the girls weightlifting team from Vero Beach High School, and a wrestler girl from Sebastian River win at the state level. And I think, there are lots of athletes that go to states. When I was a coach, we went 4 times. That was awesome. And it was the first time in, I think, that program that we went to state. Now, did we win it? No. But I think as a board, it would be kind of similar to like an Olympic athlete being invited to the White House. I think we should be inviting our students that win awards at state levels to board meetings to be recognized. That's just one thing. I mean, because we do it for science fair kids that go to state and so on. We do it for other things. And I'm sure there are other things out there that we haven't considered that we need to consider. But that was one that just kind of came to light to me recently. Yes, Dr. Schiff.
On that note, I want to acknowledge that February is Career and Technical Education Month. We have one of the best career and technical education sites in the Treasure Coast, our Treasure Coast Technical College. And so I would love to honor them at our next board meeting in February during,
Did you hear that?
whatever it's called, the Technical Education Month. I'd like to invite them in and highlight some of what they do. I think it'd be a nice time to do that.
That might be a long meeting because you've got some others too, correct?
But we
Yeah.
could just do a short presentation on acknowledging the work that they
Well,
do.
in response to that, keep in mind, we start earlier for that very same reason. So we will have a number of presentations, but we do, I think it's February 24th, we are having a CTE symposium, which is going to focus in on entrepreneurship. So we're bringing a number of key individuals who went through our schools who are entrepreneurs themselves. In addition to hearing those individuals who's created startups or understand the depth of what entrepreneurship is, Mr. Barefoot will be sharing some of his stories and the impact he has had. We will have CTE programming from each of our 2 high schools here, really marketing their programs. And I'd mentioned it a number of times, one of which is on Bob Seuss, talking through our target audience, which is 8th grade students, to come in and see the depth of programming that we have to meet the needs of all students. So we're going to bring out all the bells and whistles really to highlight the programs, the certifications, the endorsements that are available in our CTE programming. So that will be one way of acknowledging and celebrating some of the innovative things. And some of the programmings that are in our school are just never spoken about. We always talk about the advanced academics, AP, dual enrollment, Cambridge, IB. We need to highlight some things that have been in this district for a very long time and things that are continuing to be refined so our community knows the depth of what we're offering.
To that, if I can,
Oh, sure.
you know, to that end, Dr. Moore, I find myself in a place I never expected to find myself as a career academic and educator who always assumed that my son would choose academics and would choose college. He's actually choosing CTE. He's now enrolled in a technical school after high school. It's great. But I find myself aware of and advocating for that and recognizing, as you mentioned, the deficiencies in how we promote that, how we promote our dual enrollment programs, how we promote some of the great technical centers around the state. We have one of the best in the country up in Jacksonville, Tulsa Welding School. And I don't know how much we promote that. So I really appreciate your comments that we will be highlighting, promoting, and disseminating more information about that moving forward.
Yeah, hold on. Two other things, not to add more time to that meeting, but we're only meeting once a month, Dr. Moore, so Black History Month,
Right.
are we going to be recognizing that as well? And School Counselor Week. Okay, because I know in the past, we've been able to do that because we meet more often, but now that we only meet once a month, we need to start keenly aware of what all recognitions are coming up that month so we can add those.
Mr. Seymour and I were at a 8th grade career fair with Miss Peterson a couple weeks ago, and she probably had 30 booths there, not only with CTE, but with all of the businesses in our county. And that's really cool because that's 8th graders, getting them interested. And what Ms. Berenborg said about Black History Month, I think I had asked Dr. Moore, I had the privilege of speaking at the Oslo presentation at Vero Beach High School with our African-American police officers, and it was absolutely outstanding. So we've had some good things going on with that.
I am sorry to further prolong this. But you mentioned that we're starting earlier on the 28th. Nancy, that's not on our calendar. I have
Yeah.
6 o'clock.
Yeah, it's on there, 6 o'clock.
It's 6
I
o'clock,
just-
but
I was just
Dr.
checking.
Moore just said we're now starting to begin our meetings earlier. And so that,
I don't recall that.
I'll work with Nancy, but the board approved the policy the last board meeting. I'll work with Nancy to update the calendars, but we
Great.
approved a policy where the presentations will begin at 5:30.
it's fine. No, I'm
That
not
was taken
criticizing.
off.
I just want to make sure that it gets on our calendars so that we won't be here, well, we won't be here in the afternoon necessarily that day. We don't have a workshop so we're used to being here in the day and going straight through, but on the 28th, we're not necessarily, so, just to clarify.
Okay, any other last comments? Yes.
Yeah, I think that was taken off. And then what was left on was the citizens could submit their form as early as 5:45,
Yeah,
right?
I-
So that was put on, I think with the change when Mrs. Maddock came on, there was a policy that I think Mr. Barefoot proposed, and then at some point that was taken off. Let's remove it because we're not going to move forward with that. We'll keep our time the same because if we move it earlier, we're still going to be here the same amount of time. Mr. Barefoot, do you remember that?
I remember
Fine.
no. Ms. Esplin, can you shed, I mean, I remember what I remember, but it isn't necessarily what somebody else remembers. But I thought we took off the idea of starting citizen input. Because it was going to take the same amount of time anyways, but we
Yeah.
did agree to start the meetings earlier.
That part was removed from the policy. I wasn't here during that time, and Alicia worked with Suzanne on the language and the starting the meeting
looking at it now, it's not in there.
I'll look at the policy, but I don't think that's what we.
Okay, so Nancy will send us a calendar invitation if it's updated, otherwise it stays at 6 o'clock. Okay. All right, anything else for the good of the board? Anyone mind if I gavel and we're done? 3:50, our meeting is concluded. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Enjoy your Valentine's evening.
Thank you.
3:53, thank you.